Good afternoon. We're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to the June 5th regular meeting of the Everett Public Schools Board of Directors. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
President Mason.
Present.
Vice President Andrews.
Present.
Director Lassane.
Present.
Director Mitchell.
Present.
Director Winta. Student Representative Parikh.
Present.
Student Representative Polak.
Present. Thank you. Our first item of business tonight is the adoption of the agenda. Dr. Cohn, may you please introduce tonight's agenda?
I'd be happy to. Consistent with the plans that you established at your 2017 Summer Planning Workshop, tonight's agenda contains several elements related to both the district's strategic plan and the board's annual goals. There is a segment this evening for routine business, one for recognition items, a segment for board comments, one for the superintendent's report, a segment for strategic progress reporting, a segment for information items, and a segment for new business, as well as a segment for upcoming agenda items. Following publishing the agenda to the board, we made a few changes. Item 4.1, adoption of the agenda, was updated with a corrected timing sheet. Item 8.1, superintendent's report, will be updated during the meeting as is customary for regular meetings. Item 11.1, recommendation for elementary school boundary revisions, will be updated with the presentation that we'll be giving tonight during the course of the meeting. The board may elect to change the order of business by a majority vote of the members. This is not the point in your agenda to request items be removed from the consent agenda. So in all other respects, the agenda is as it was originally published to you, and we ask your approval thereof.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded to approve the agenda. Is there any discussion?
Yes. I would like to make one comment. The superintendent's report is item 9.01 by 8.01. So I just want to make that note. Is that correct?
Yeah, you're correct. We have a typo in my notes.
Thank you. Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The motion carries. Which brings us to tonight's recognition. We have several people here tonight to celebrate, and we're going to start off tonight with Everett Public Schools Teacher of the Year, and Dr. Lancaster is going to get us started.
So I'm going to ask Miss Margaret Ames and Mr. Allen to come on up, and the students who are with her as well. Research shows that teachers are the single most important school-based determinant of student success. Miss Margaret Ames is such a teacher, and it is an honor to introduce her as the 2018 Everett Public Schools Teacher of the Year. Miss Ames is an exceptional teacher for some of our most vulnerable students who are learning English as a new language. Through active engagement, high expectations, and by instilling a love of learning, Miss Ames gets her students to thrive. Students and their families new to the country do not always know how to navigate our complex systems. Miss Ames teaches them to love learning while helping them monitor their homework, set goals, and work to proficiency. She says one of her greatest joys is having students bound across the school grounds to tell her that they earned a good grade in a class that they had been struggling with. Miss Ames says, and I quote, "We bump fists, high five, whoop it up, and sometimes I even shed a tear." I tell them I'm proud, and then I ask them this question: how does it feel to do well? Great, I am happy is the common response. Miss Ames will tell you that understanding her students' families' cultures and traditions brings a tremendous richness to the classroom. She has a heart for students and brings her passion to their learning in a manner that makes our district proud. Miss Ames was nominated by her principal, Mr. Kevin Allen, so I'd like to invite Mr. Allen and a few of our students to say a few words about Miss Ames.
Thank you, Dr. Lancaster. Really, the people that are impacted and get to see the impact of Ms. Ames' amazing work ethic and love for her kids are the students, and so we've asked a couple to come and speak today. They're very nervous, so as am I, so we're all in this together. But Destin and Crystal want to share a few words about Margaret Ames.
Hi everyone, my name is Destin Divan Vanandamo Matu. I'm an 8th grader. Of course, I was supposed to be in 9th grade, but I got held back when I came to America. And honestly, there's no other teacher as Miss Ames, because I don't think Miss Ames is a great teacher, because I know she is one. Mm-hmm. I mean, who could teach me English in 3 months? Mm-hmm. And she literally was on me. She wouldn't let me speak French. She will always tell me this: when you get a good grade and when you feel good about yourself, how does it feel? And I'll be like, it feels good. And she'll always just motivates me everywhere I will go. I mean, even in math, literally, I'm not good at math. And she'll be like, me either. I am not good at math, but Destin, if you put your mind into it, you can do it. And I really don't know any person as Miss Ames. I mean, basically all my teachers sometimes, when they can't deal with me anymore, Miss Ames will always be with me. When my parents drive me crazy, Miss Ames will be calm, it's okay. That's what she'll say. And literally, and to be more serious, I really don't know any person like Miss Ames. She became a mother to me. Literally, she taught me everything: school, life, how to behave, anger management, everything. She taught me that. Literally, when I was a newcomer in my school, I would be so mad. I start punching things, talking to myself, feel depressed, and she'll literally just come and pull her hand on my shoulder and be like, everything is okay. And I'll look up to her like a mother that really, really never was there for me. But in other words, Miss Ames is a great teacher, someone that I will never, ever forget in my life. It's like someone that will always be a part of my life, even if I grow up. And when I'll become successful, I'm pretty sure I'll come back and say hi to Miss Ames. I'll give her what she wants, because she taught me English. Right now, I couldn't even say hi. I didn't know how to speak. 3 months. It only took her 3 months for me to be fluent. It took her 3 years for me to talk how I'm talking right now. And I really don't know a different person as Miss Ames. So I really don't have anything else to say, but besides a big thank you to Miss Ames. And yeah, that's it.
So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Crystal Jane Saranya, and it is my great honor and privilege to be here in front of you. And I really want to talk about how good and great Miss Ames is and how she helped me. So, I am a Filipino that just moved to this country last August, and I have lots of worries and fears. But thanks to Miss Ames, she helped me a lot. She inspires me to do, not just to do good, but to be better in all things we do. And also, she motivates me to reach or even exceed our goals. She encouraged us to think outside of the box. She taught us to have confidence to speak our minds. And her class is never boring, because even though our class with her is in the afternoon, she still comes with her high energy and with her beautiful smile. Having her as my English teacher really helped me adjust easily in new environment, new cultures, and new language and people. So, thank you, Miss Ames, very much for your help, and yeah. I really, truly admire you and respect you.
Thank you.
there's very little else I can really say that the students haven't said, but I've been doing this a very long time, and Margaret Ames is, in my 27 years, the most exceptional teacher I've ever come across. And so I'm tearing up from their words. She took a very divergent path to get to where she is today, and I kind of love that I found this out, and that she was a nun and a world traveler and just had a calling on her heart to serve kids. And so there's no secret on why students at Eisenhower scored twice as well on tests as other students in our district, 3 times as well as students in the state. It's because of Margaret. And at one point she hinted at maybe retirement, and I begged her not to, so I'm glad she's here today and is staying for another year at least. But I am so proud to have gotten to know her and to have worked with her and learned from her as well. And so congratulations, Margaret.
You just got to witness why I love what I do. I just want to thank so much the opportunity to be a part of this district. I have been a teacher for many years, and what I appreciate the most are the tools and the resources that you so readily give to us. In my classroom, it's a one-on-one platform. We have Google Translation that we do all day, every day. Our curriculums are excellent. And I'm just so appreciative of my office staff. When you walk into the office at Eisenhower Middle School, you'll be greeted by warm and friendly people. And so all of the immigrants that come to our country first meet them. The second thing is I want to thank our counselors who are so compassionate and caring of our kids. And our staff, you could not find a more collaborative, caring, compassionate staff. And they just honestly make the rest of us look really good. I want to especially thank Colleen Bledsoe, who is honestly a wizard. The data and how she keeps us organized, and again, her maternal and genuine love of the care of the kids is what really makes us a dynamic team. But I most especially want to thank my kids, my students and their families. Last week we did a project, and they had to do 10 fun facts about their country. And they shared their flag, their government, their food, their celebrations and holidays, and every day they share their 38 different languages. And they honestly, and I mean this so sincerely, that we are so fortunate and blessed to have those students in our country, in our world, because the gifts and the talents and the strengths that they bring to us, which was easily modeled by these 2 wonderful kids, is really what makes, I really honestly believe, our world a better place. Thank you. Okay.
Come on. Okay, board members.
They're going to take a picture.
Oh, cool. Photo.
So on the land, for English learning teacher of the year award for your ongoing dedication, instruction, and care of the students.
Thank you so much.
Okay, come anywhere. Slide in, send that to her. Throw that clip right to her.
Yeah, right next to, yeah, on the other side. Yes. Oh, wait.
Thank you, everybody.
We lost all that when I was in France.
Okay, and next up, in recognition tonight, in our boardroom, we have the second place world champions for the first robotics competition. And I believe you have brought with you a demonstration, perhaps? So are we going back to the back?
Well, I think Mr. Fleckenstein introduces this particular recognition, and I think we're going to hear from Maggie for just a couple of moments.
Okay.
And then you're going to get to walk in the back, and the students are going to explain and demonstrate.
Excellent.
Did that work for you?
Yes.
Great.
Well, good evening, and I'm excited to share with you the Jackson High robotics team. As the board knows through reports and information provided in the superintendent's report, the robotics programs in Everett Public Schools are thriving and competing at a high level. And in no other school is that exemplified than Jackson High School. And I'm excited to introduce to you tonight Jackson High School Assistant Principal, Mr. Sean Monahan, to share with you our Jackson High School robotics team, their fantastic coach, who's here tonight, and their success this year in robotics competition.
Good evening. It is with great pride that I present to our board of directors some amazing and talented Jackson students whose dedication this year to Jackson High School and our Jack in the Bot robotics team resulted in a second place finish at the International Championship. In front of 30,000 participants and fans on Saturday, April 21st in Houston, Texas, these creative and resourceful students put their innovation skills to the test and competed in the final match for the World Championship. Despite the difficult odds, this team dug in, stuck together, and eclipsed 91,000 student participants from 27 countries to reach the final match. Students, the Jackson High School community is so proud of you and this team and your amazing accomplishment. And I personally would like to thank you for representing our school and district throughout the competition season with maturity and class. Thank you to each of you, exemplifying the highest standards of the Everett Public Schools and the Jackson Way. I would also like to take the opportunity to recognize the many volunteers, coaches, and parents that support Jackson High Robotics, without whose support this accomplishment would not be possible. Thank you for helping our students to reach their potential and their dreams. And now I'd like to introduce the mastermind behind JHS Robotics, our advisor, Ms. Maggie Thorleifson, to share more about the exciting journey our robotics team took this year on their way to compete in the international competition.
Thank you very much. First, I'd like to say thank you so much for this honor today to be recognized. I need to first recognize our outstanding assistant coach, Patrick Wolfenden, who is the brilliance and amazing engineering inspiration of this year's engineering achievements, as well as all of our mentors, our entire mentor team, all of our sponsor partnerships. And to go into a little bit more detail is students always do it a little bit better, is Zach.
Well, thank you guys again for having us. I think a lot of the focus right now is on our accomplishments that we were able to do in the past couple of months, but I think the real progress of the team started way back in July. The team invests a lot of time outside of the school year and just year-round into making sure we can have a meaningful impact at Jackson, and especially with the students involved. So this last summer, we actually purchased some advanced tooling and machining for our workspace, and we were able to design our own drive system. It's called a swerve drive, and as Ms. T likes to call it, it's butterly smooth. Just slides around the field, and it really paid off for this competition season that we were able to achieve the level of competition we were this year. But to go into more specifics, actually, Jacob here has some words to say.
Hello. So I'm the lead programmer for the team, and one of the things that we like that we do with the team is we keep wanting to improve. And I've been on the team for 3 years now. And one thing that I've noticed is that every single year you have students teaching other students, you have mentors teaching engineering and different ways to build parts, but then those students then share that knowledge with those other students. And yeah.
And if you guys could direct your attention in the back, we have a little demonstration of the world-class robot.
Can we
I think
come
we're
back
going to walk
there?
back there. We're going to walk back and come.
All right, yeah.
Join you.
Oh, they're coming back here. That's easier. There's more space back there. Set up for a gathering system, and teams all over the world tried to attempt 2 separate systems and were unsuccessful. So the district loves supporting FIRST Robotics, and we love that they support FIRST Robotics. The program in the district is amazing. I've been a part of it for 7 years now, all the way through. And flex a little bit, and they squeeze onto the cube, and it's able to secure the cube, and then lift it up. And it's able to lift it up and place it where we need it to go.
Zach, point out the top wheels and how those are custom for the different orientations on the milk crate.
Yeah, so the milk crate is referred to a cube in terms of the game. Well, it's not actually a cube. It's different proportions on each side. So we needed to come up with a unique way of assessing and collecting the cube based on its orientation. So we actually worked with a local Everett machining company to design our own custom wheels that are able to flex and collect the cube in whatever orientation it may be in.
Can that project, so like you're to pick the milk carton, could you put it up on that shelf there?
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
so
So that's what.
That was the objective. There was
Yeah.
a scale
Okay.
that we had, and we actually had some slides to show you.
Yeah, you can control the speed at which it releases the cube, which allows us to assess the different proportions and different placements we need to do.
And how many people worked on this?
About 30. Yeah, about 30 active members we have on the team at
And
Jackson.
we have about 13 engineers that work with our team.
This is a completely loaded question. Do you have enough space at Jackson for all of this work?
No.
So,
Thank
yeah.
We could, if we had an ask, it would be more space at Jackson. Space actually has been a very big game changer. When our team is 10 years old, and for several of those years, we built our robot out in the hallway, and I would pack it up and in my back of my classroom in the evenings. And about 3 years ago, Mr. Peters helped and worked with the Heatherwood principal, and we got access to a portable. And that's the game changer. That is why we're a world championship team now, because we finally had space to actually do our engineering, invest in real machining tools, engineering tools, where we could actually do that. It was a game changer that we were able to purchase a CNC mill because we had a space to put the CNC mill. And that's a huge difference, because up until that point, we had been machining parts, but each part was human-made and, eyeballed and measured humanly. But, when you do that, it's like, they're not exact, and so our robot would have like a little jiggle as it went down, right? And now, because of the CNC mill, it is precision tool. And so those swerve modules, which are custom machined in our machine shop, each one of them, and it's a custom design, are exactly the same. They're precisely measured, and that's why it can move so smoothly. I mean, it's physics, right? And so it has to have precision to really work correctly. And that's because we got that space.
And are you finding kids, I'm taking it from, kids that, so they might not be able to do the programming, but they can do the machining?
Yes.
You're finding all different skill levels that could take kids to
Yes.
Boeing, to the University of Montana,
Yes.
to wherever,
Yes.
based on what they're learning here.
Yes.
That's awesome, thank you.
Yeah, so actually, that's okay. We're in our preseason from about September or December before our big 6-week start. The team does a full-on informational and hands-on tool training for all of our students. Because like you mentioned, students are coming from all over. They may not have the experience that some have or access. So the team really prides itself on preparing all of the students to go off to a major university, to go off into a trade school. They are learning the skills here in high school that they'll use in college and beyond.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for coming and joining us.
Yeah. One of the big goals that our team has is that being on our team should give you an edge when you go into college to become an engineer. And that's our alumni come back, and that's one of the game changers. He said, you know, he's in mechanical engineering. He got direct admission into mechanical engineering, partly because of being on our team. And he said, you know, we're using SolidWorks, it's the exact same software that the team uses. And he goes, it's really important you guys learn that stuff. And so he came back and helped teach the class last summer. That's great. Yeah. So it really is this tight-knit first family. Our assistant coach right now is an alumni member of our team. He was a very founding member the very first year we were a team.
Well, thank you very much for photo up front. We'd love to have you come join us.
He just got an internship this summer at Microsoft. Wonderful.
It's just sad when you win a prize and all this, you got some skill left behind.
Well, on behalf of Everett Public Schools, we'd like to thank you for your leadership, and for your participation, and congratulations on your Thank you so much for coming. Thank you very much. Thank you.
We sent about 23 out of the yeah.
You put it in the lives of the airlines? Thank you. Thank you very much for your
Okay, now we're going to move on to 5.03. This is a highlight of our afternoon, recognition of the retiring student representative to the school board. And tonight, I believe we have an opportunity for the directors to say a few comments to Druvik. And then I believe we are going to do a little celebrating during our break time. So how about if we start over with Hunter, perhaps?
Well, it has only been a short time, but I have very much enjoyed sitting across from you and learning from what you've said, and I think I've gotten a few pointers just from your comments. And you've done an amazing job, and it's obvious you take care to listen to what's going on, and you go in depth with it. And I enjoy it because it makes me feel like I kind of have a grasp at what I'm doing up here, and it's really comforting to have just that common knowledge that we're in the same place, we're in it together. So thank you very much.
And I would like to say thank you also. You've been an outstanding young man up there. Absolutely, your accomplishments, bar none, things I have never seen from a student that I know. So thank you for that. But also, on a personal note, that you've helped me as my daughter has entered high school. What I would help my daughter be successful, what the classes that she takes. You know, I've asked you a whole lot of questions about classes at Jackson, and I just really appreciate the honest feedback that you've been able to give me that I can share with her. So thank you for that.
Director Andrews?
Oh, you're skipping yourself.
Wrapped up.
Gosh, back in 2011, when we decided to have student reps, I don't think we could have ever imagined what a wonderful representative we would have with a person such as yourself. I enjoyed being able to sit next to you for a short time and just kind of have casual conversation and hear about all the AP exams you were taking the next day, and then calmly sitting here through a board meeting, knowing you were going to go home and study. You've contributed a remarkable student voice to the board, which was really our purpose in having student members. So thank you for that. And your questions, follow-up questions to presentations were always awareness raising and right on point. So I have to say something about you too that has just had such an impression on me is you have accomplished so many things and you do it with such modesty. It's amazing. Again, just in casual conversations, like, what'd you do this summer? Oh, I spent my summer at MIT, you know, or those sorts of things, just so matter of fact and just so modest, as I said. So when you are famous years from now, remember us all, and we will know that we had a part in your education and helping you become the person that you are. So wishing you much success in the future.
Rubik, it's been an honor and a pleasure to be able to have said, I've served with you here, because I have watched you grow from when you first came on the board. You've taught us a lot, really. You've taught us how students perceive things. And the questions that you've asked are so right on and so important and necessary. And it's opened our eyes, opened my eyes, I know, definitely. It's been said before, you're going to go very far, and I hope you remember the little people down here. You remember us and come back and share what you have learned too. Share it with your student colleagues from the board. Share it from us. Let us know if we've prepared you well. Let us know if there is something we could have done better, because there are students behind you who are looking to the board for that direction, and you can help us. You've helped us so far with giving us that student voice, and you've done an outstanding job with it. Thank you so much for what you've done. It's been said before, you're very humble in the way in which you present something. Even when you go with us down to Olympia to see our legislators, you do well out in public. That's one reason why we push you students up to the front line, because we know that you can represent us well, and you have. And I expect that, you're going to be doing great things in the future. And hopefully when I pick up the newspaper and I see your name, I'm going to say, I know that person. Good luck to you and everything that you do. And thank you so much for giving us the honor of being able to have learned from you and had you work with us. Thank you.
Well, I should have known we needed more than 5 minutes to talk about and praise Druvik for all his accomplishments and participation here on the school board. Successful individuals, young people like yourself, certainly it's a combination of nature and nurture. You're an incredibly bright individual. You've had obviously great support at home, and I have to say, you are an individual that we love to see, where you have embraced all that you could in your education and really taken advantage of the opportunities and created some for yourself. So you're an individual of great poise. You're dedicated. We appreciate all the hours you have spent here in the boardroom with us, in addition to your very busy life, and you will very much be missed. In my family, we have a husky and we have a screaming tree in our family, and so I'm a bit conflicted, but I certainly also know the individuals that go on to Stanford, the opportunities that they have, and what an amazing school it is. And your years here are only a beginning. So we wish you well, and we wish you luck, and we look forward to where life takes you next. So I think with that, what's that? Oh.
We have time?
We do. We always have time for Druvik. Sorry about that.
No, fine. I'm good either way. So just a couple quick comments. I think one of the most rewarding experiences is being able to watch you all grow as young people, as young adults, as students, as communicators during the 2 years that you're serving on the board. I can't say for a second, Druvik, that you haven't met all of our expectations, that you haven't exemplified that kind of growth and maturity, and I think poise has been a word that's been used to describe your demeanor. I want to suggest that you've done a fine job communicating with other student leaders in the district. You've attended a number of the breakfasts that I hold with ASP leaders, and I appreciate that. And you've contributed to their thinking and sort of transferred knowledge and thought and ideas across across different groups, and I think that's helpful. I want to echo what you've heard here. I think you represented the district incredibly well at our visits with legislators. I think in so many ways you represented your school, your family, your community very, very well, with great honor and integrity. And you are clearly an example of hard work and persistence and frankly, the 21st century skills that we talk about, that we plan for, that we assess for, that we work to build in students throughout the district. So I'm grateful for all of that, and I want to also echo the board members' comments about doing what you do with the right amount of humility and grace, and I think everybody very much appreciates that. You are an incredibly bright young man, and I think you've heard from all of us how much we look forward to seeing what you become across the course of your life. And to know that you do that with a remarkable sense of humility is, I think, worth noting. I'd also suggest that you have conducted yourself with a very high degree of professionalism as a student rep, and in that way as well, you've represented all of us well and brought honor to all of us, including your family, which is probably first on your mind. So thank you all. Thank you for all the time that you've devoted to this effort.
Okay. But of course, there's photos. So we're going to get one last photo up front with you, and I think we have a little something here to hand to you. So if you might come up front.
So I have the honor to say thank you for your service to the school board. We appreciate your dedication and all that you've done for us. Can we get parents up here? One more time? Yes. One on each side? Yeah.
Very good.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Mom. Thank you so much. He's gonna go very. You raised a good amount. Your daughter too before. Lots of hard work these kids put in. Look at the places we've been to and the things we've done. That's fantastic. Oh.
Okay, on to business. We are moving to section 6.0, public comment. Dr. Cohn, do we have any public comment this evening?
We do not have any requests for public comment this evening. I would note that you did hear a number of comments at your last board meeting on the elementary boundary process and the committee's recommendation. Folks could come tonight and do that as well. We provide my recommendation to you later in the meeting, and then our expectation is that we would schedule time, likely extended time during the next board meeting for public comment around the recommendations that I'm providing you. That's part of the sequence of work that we're doing. Tonight, nobody has requested to come forward.
Okay, thank you. We will move now to 7.0, the consent agenda. Dr. Cohn, may you please provide an overview of tonight's consent agenda?
The board's consent agenda includes repetitive business items. These include, for example, meeting minutes, personnel actions, expense vouchers, and recurring contracts. Sometimes the consent agenda will include items that occur less frequently but are of a routine business nature. The less frequently occurring consent agenda items are usually reviewed by the board in its Friday report 1 or more weeks before the board meeting when those items are scheduled to appear on the agenda. This gives directors time to ask staff questions about those items or to consider a discussion about the policy implications of the items. If a consent agenda item is removed by the concurrence of 2 directors, that item is placed in new business and the system automatically renumbers the remaining items for you. The board votes on the consent agenda in a single motion. By definition, consent agendas are not debatable. In the case of this consent agenda, the superintendent's office has received no questions or comments regarding the items. Therefore, the consent agenda is presented for your approval as published.
Thank you. It was a very full consent agenda this meeting.
It is robust.
Which I think is going to keep Mr. Gunn fairly busy this summer. Is there a motion to, yes. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
There a second?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Does any director wish to remove an item from the consent agenda and place it in new business section of the agenda? Hearing none, we will move to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The motion carries. Now we come to section 8.0, which is board comments. This is a time when student representatives and directors have an opportunity to share news and information as it relates to district business. Do you want to go first or last today? You get to pick.
I can go first.
Okay. Student Representative Parikh is going to start us off.
So I just wanted to start off by thanking everyone for their kind words. It really does mean a lot to hear such nice things from people I respect so much. I just wanted to make a few comments about reflecting on my time with the board and then thanking you all for everything that you have done for me the past 2 years. So when I first started with the board 2 years ago now, I wasn't really sure what to expect. I didn't know if I would enjoy it. I didn't know really, frankly, what I would be doing here, what my role would be. But I can definitely say now, looking back, that it completely exceeded even my highest expectations of what it could have been. From here, the time we spent here in the boardroom, being able to work alongside the board and not just learning a lot, but also enjoying the learning that's happening. And also outside of the boardroom, when we visited Olympia for the legislative conferences, that was a really, really fantastic experience. Just something that I would never have been able to do something like that if I wasn't here with the board. And also, even more so, I would say, in my everyday life, just as a student, I've taken on a completely different perspective after I started working with the board on what it means to be a student and about the education system in general. So nowadays, at some point during the day, every single day, I find some situation where I go back and think about something that we talked about in the boardroom, or some conversation comes up with a teacher or a fellow student about schools or about different policies that are being discussed. And I have so much to bring to that conversation now that I was really clueless about before. And so that's really been fun for me to expand my knowledge, not just while I'm in the boardroom, but in my everyday life. And to conclude, I really want to just thank each and every one of you for being such inspiring role models to me over the past 2 years. I've learned a lot in terms of content about education and policy and things like that, but just other skills, soft skills, as some of you have pointed out, a lot of all my skills I've been developing over the past 2 years, a lot of that comes from interacting with you all and learning how to be more professional, how to communicate my ideas, and and so I overall there's just been so much, and I can't really express in words how grateful I am for having been able to serve as this position.
Thank you very much for those kind words. Very nice, and no surprise that once again you end on a very articulate and thoughtful comment. Appreciate that. Director Lassane.
Yes, I would like to make a comment. June is always one of those months in which we can look back over the year and just say, woo, we've come this far, and this is a fantastic period. I told one of our board secretaries, yes, indeed, I am coming to the graduation. Some people get high going out and working and running 7 miles or a marathon. I get high going to graduations and shaking the hands of those students who are graduating. So I really appreciate that 100%. I also look back over this time and I see with, I guess, renewed hope and renewed vision when we see in our consent agenda Policy 2000, this is philosophy and goals. And in it, we mention such things as what we expect our students to get out of this. And I think that's wonderful that we can go back and review those goals and, and be able to say to the community why we're here, making sure that they understand what our goals for student learning is all about, and then also realizing the benefits of graduation. We had the opportunity in these last couple of weeks since the last regular board meeting to look at what are we doing for students with these learning goals that we have. We had our special meeting on the career-connected learning, and I really got a high on that one, finding out the things we are doing for our students, involving them in internship programs, some of which you've enjoyed, and apprenticeship programs, so that we can make sure that once they graduate, they have a direction in their life, or at least know that there is opportunity out there. Again, we're looking at our learning goals for each and every student and ensuring that they are prepared. So I get a high on this month. This is a fantastic month, and I'm looking forward to graduation. I'm also looking forward to a time when I can say we've worked so hard to ensure that kids are graduating, that we have another graduation in August, just to make sure that they get over that hump. But what I also look at is the things we do to ensure that each child is ready. We have a problem or a concern with growth in the South End. But you know, when we go forward and decide a new elementary school is coming into play, and we need to make sure that you know, every opportunity to take a look at student learning and make sure we go down to the nth degree about each child and what's available for each child. No discrimination involved with it. No, well, we can leave these kids aside and forget about those. No, we don't forget about one child. We don't even forget about one child. And I'm glad we are taking the time and putting the talent and resources in to examine every procedure that we do, so that we can focus in on what the student learning goals are and how anything that we do will impact each one of them, to make sure that they graduate, they have the experience they need, so they can move on. These 2 past months has been really extremely insightful, and I'm still getting that high, so thank you.
Thank you.
Druvik, I want to thank you for your comments. It means a lot to me, and I think I can speak for my colleagues that I think we kind of selfishly wanted the student voice when we had student reps, and I hadn't really thought through the advantage to the student as well. I mean, it's obviously there and it happens, but you are articulately set that forth, so thank you. I also forgot to congratulate you on your Grand Prize Award, the Intel International Science and Engineering Fair. I might be stealing Dr. Cohn's thunder. Pardon?
I think we mentioned it last meeting.
Oh, I might have missed it because I was a little late. Anyway, congratulations. That was amazing. And I wish, you know, you talked about your understanding of education. I wish we could transmit that to more of our community, our society, and it's a knowledge base that you will take with you and, you know, apply everywhere. Like when you get to Stanford, you're going to have this sort of understanding of how educational institutions work and be able to build on that. So thank you again for sharing that with us. Besides that, I really enjoyed honoring the teacher, Margaret Ames, tonight, and hearing her students speak. That is so impressive, and I really wish her statement about the value of immigrants in our schools and society, I wish we could expand that a little bit further too, to the general population. And what a pleasure to see the robotics exhibit and to hear them talk about continuous improvement and mentorship, which again are things that we try to promote. And what a growing, hands-on intelligence building experience that is. And I think we need to keep that in mind when we're thinking of budgeting and where we're putting our resources. Robotics is obviously a very good return on our investment.
Thank you. I appreciate the time I was given to ask questions, because my ignorance about robotics, to hear about the machining, to know that kids can join this that aren't all university bound, and that the students in that group appreciated some of them are vo-tech bound, so that club does serve every student. Concerned though that they're in a portable, and we need space for students. So how much are clubs going to suffer at Jackson because of the space we need for students? But on a very personal, sad note, May 25th, there was a school shooting at a middle school in Indiana. Indiana's a fairly decent-sized state. I have a colleague who's a good friend of mine that works in Indiana. So I texted her and I said, that school shooting, I hope that it's all of your friends and family are safe. And she texted me right back and said, that's my daughter's school. And that's my daughter's friend who was shot, and my daughter's teacher who saved the kid. And I'm in line to pick up my daughter right now. She's safe. And when, with that, the press that with the Santa Fe school, and to hear a young lady in the newspaper, and I have it up on my computer so I can read it, said, I've always kind of felt like eventually it was going to happen here too. And to have it at a middle school, Santa Fe High School, which we had a moment of silence at, the budgeting plans and things that we approve for the changes that are happening this summer, the fact that we have the panorama for kids, that we have the app, that we have these resources, we have these counselors so that our kids can be safe, that maybe our kids don't have to think that eventually it will be here. So our parents don't have to wait in line like my friend did, hoping her child is safe. But at the Jackson meeting, a mom who I've met at several meetings, and I forget her name, but I could recognize her in anything, said that her son who knows 15 kids off the top of his head that he's concerned with. And so she asked me what to do with that. And I said, well, you know, they're on the app, and there's a place where you can report. Well, yeah, he doesn't know if it's serious enough that he wants to report his friends. And I said, well, and I happened to be standing next to Dave Peters' table, and I said, well, you know, Mr. Peters is right here. Do you want to talk to him? No, he doesn't want to think it's that serious. He doesn't want to escalate it. He just wants to talk to somebody. And so I thought about a lot of the meetings we have, and I felt as a parent I was lacking, because I felt for her as a parent, but as a board member, I said, with our teachings we've had here, is there a trusted adult at Jackson that your son can talk to have this conversation you're having? I know 15 kids that might do this. Then the teacher can probe, ask some probing questions to find out more, and then maybe the teacher can escalate it because that's what they're trained at. But I really reflected, as a parent, I didn't know more than the app because my daughter's never come to me with these things. And for this mom, I felt that she wasn't sure how to escalate it in a safe way for her son and for those 15 kids, because there could be nothing, but there could be something. And so I think that maybe with all that we're doing, if there are some other opportunities to make sure parents know, kids know, really, how do they safely do it? Because obviously the app and the phone number still make her son nervous, that he's tattling on someone. And so if there is, I just think that there's an opportunity just so that so it doesn't happen here. And then that's just my sad note. But then also, I thoroughly enjoyed the meeting we had at Jackson High School about the overcrowding and what to do with those kids, and the engagement of 250 was the estimate. I thought 300. Somebody said 200, so I figured 250 is a good medium. The comments that they came from, the compromises that we might all have to make, a lot of questions about when are we doing a bond, and that people asked me one-on-one, and it was a lot of fun to see that engagement of people that really want to have their voice heard about what to do about that overcrowding down there. So thank you. That's enough.
I don't want to eat up a bunch of time, but I just wanted to say that I think the recognitions we've had tonight are really representative of the amazing school year we've had so far. And it's amazing to see stuff like this in person. I never even thought that people just went to board meetings. I didn't know that was a thing that happened. And now that I'm here, I'm sitting and I see the amazing accomplishments that our school district makes. It's honestly amazing. And I really hope that our last few weeks live up to this legacy that we have going so far. So
thank you. I will add to that and just say this is a great time of year as we wind down the school year and we have celebrations and recognitions throughout the district. I feel very fortunate as president of the board that I get to attend these and meet many of the young people and hear about their accomplishments and meet their parents. From athletes to scholars to teachers, state champions, it really is a celebration of all that goes on in our district. And it is very much something that, like Pam said, with graduation, that really does fill you full happiness. So with that, I'm going to move the meeting forward to section 9.0 and the superintendent's report. Dr. Cohn, I think you have some news to share.
I think we have a little bit. And let's go ahead and we'll get going on the few slides that we've assembled for you this evening. I think our cover slide, which generally lays out the topics I'm going to include in the report, shows you some pictures as well. And this is one where we get an opportunity to congratulate Forest View Elementary's Washington State Rubik's Cube competition winners. Their 8-member team solved 25 cubes in record time. It was 2 minutes and 37 seconds. And I want you to know, Druvik, I thought about bringing a Rubik's Cube or two in tonight to see how fast you could do that. But I thought, nah, probably not a good idea. What do you think? So the next item is a little bit more congratulations. These are our 2018 Superintendent Scholar Award winners. This is Harshu Marcinari and at Jackson High School, Jacqueline Talavera Cruz from Sequoia, Tivu from Cascade High School, and Elizabeth Dowdle from Everett High School. They are our 4 high school Superintendent Scholar awardees this year, and I have to tell you that the entire event that we experienced was every bit as exciting and as rewarding and as emotional as all of the other ones that I've attended in the past. I think it's been 8 years now. Also, like you to know that we honor and thank our Rotary Club for scholarships again this year. The Rotary Club of Everett presented 56 students with $202,200 worth of scholarships. Over the years, the club has donated more than $3.5 million to the educational growth of students in our district and a few surrounding schools. We're so grateful for the amazing partnership that we have with our Rotary, and are grateful for how they help us change lives in our community. So wanted to just take a moment and remind you all of what a huge impact some of our community members have in the growth of our students. Last week, I also had the pleasure of attending the district's athletics awards ceremony with Director Mason. We celebrated a number of student athletes. 2 of them for each school are nominated for scholarships. This year's winners of the 2018 Dwayne Lane Athletic Scholarships are Everett High School's Megan Gordon and Jackson High School's Daniel Arias. Is that Arias? Arias. Arias. Thank you, Arias. I've heard it 3 ways, so I want to make sure I get it right. Daniel had an incredible story, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about him in just a minute. We also want to recognize this has been kind of a Jackson week in many ways, I'll say. The Lady Timberwolves brought home a wonderful new award. They're the state 4A softball champions for the first time in the school's history. They decisively outscored their opponents 26-3 in the state tournament. Their coach is Kyle Peacock, and we want to recognize them. And I don't know that we can get them to the school board meeting on the last day of school, but it would be kind of fun to honor them for that wonderful accomplishment, wouldn't it? So anyway, I wanted to just take a moment and say good news, congratulations to them. This is a picture of Daniel. He won the 400 meter title at the state track and field championships. His time was what's described as a blazing 49.02 seconds. He beat second place by about a half second. He told a very moving story of immigrating to this country, coming here and not speaking any English, and all of the time and effort that his mother invested in his success. And really, it was a remarkable story about people who are new to our country. They arrive here, they come into our schools, and a wealth of opportunity is provided. You heard a little bit more of that this evening as we honored our teacher of the year and sent her on to compete against folks in the region and the state. So I wanted to take a moment and recognize Daniel's accomplishments and also at the same time, frankly, recognize the quality and character of the staff and the community support that we have in this community for children, no matter where they come from or no matter when they arrive in our schools.
And he has a football.
And he has a full ride scholarship in football. Okay, thank you very much.
Despite being really fast
it
on the track.
it was truly a remarkable story.
Talented.
Everett High School held a summer job fair. It's the very first one that they held, and it was very successful. PTA volunteers, district staff, community businesses, organizations created a really wonderful event for Everett's appreciative students. Many folks shared that they plan to complete their applications over the weekend, and community participants, the list of community participants is pretty significant. Everett Police, the Monte Cristo Ballroom, Elwood Staffing, Lowe's, United States Navy, United States Army, the Washington Oaks Retirement Community, Naval Station Everett Morale, Welfare, and Recreation Programs, the United States Air Force Vector Marketing, Snow Owl Food Co-op, Everett Parks and Rec, and the YMCA. That's a pretty remarkable list of folks who are helping with the summer job fair. So we want to thank all those folks, and we want to recognize the folks at Everett High who made this possible. Last week, we honored 31 retirees in a special celebration here in the Community Resource Center. That was 31 of 61 who've notified us that they're retiring. At this event, their supervisors explain how each of them has an impact on student learning, whether directly or indirectly, and we take a few moments to celebrate their accomplishments and their contributions to the district. This happens to be a picture of Catherine Christensen. I want to thank the directors who were able to fit this particular ceremony into their schedules. Plans are in place for our summer reading program. I think you all know it's a wonderful opportunity to keep our students engaged in literacy over the summer and to help reduce that summer slide, that backward motion that happens sometimes with reading competency and scores over the course of that period. The slide this slide, not the summer slide, but this slide in front of you, shows student artwork, which is is an inspiration for this year's summer reading program flyers. I asked Dr. Stewart's executive assistant for a little bit of data, and I wanted you to know that in 2015, 4,367 students participated. In 2016, 6,848 students participated. In 2017, 8,031 students participated. I hear Dr. Stewart has set a target of 10,000 this year, but we won't know that until she tells us, okay? All right, anyway, we wanted to make sure that you were aware that that was happening. This year, is one of those years where we're in the process of bargaining a new contract with our teachers. As has been typical, we receive questions about when the district calendar will be published. Our agreement provides for the release of some information, and what we're doing is publishing a statement that tells folks that that calendar is a part of negotiations with teachers, and the negotiations are currently underway. It's not unusual for those talks to last into August, sometimes late into August. And in the past, Everett Public Schools has traditionally started school the Wednesday after Labor Day, which would be September 5 this coming year. In addition, winter break would typically be expected to occur December 17 to January 1, and spring break would typically be expected to occur the week of April 1 through 5. So what we're going to be telling people is our community may, of course, use those dates for planning with some confidence, but we want to caution families that the collective bargaining process could produce alternate dates for the year. We're going to use website, email, phone, text messaging, and social media to announce the calendar, the full calendar, when our contract negotiations are completed. The information on this slide will be going out as well as the information I just shared with you. We have a couple of big events coming. Elementary School 18 groundbreaking is scheduled this coming Monday, June 11, 3 p.m. The ceremony will include a few district staff, the board, a few folks that we have thought to invite. It's a construction zone. It's not easy to traverse. It's not really safe for a lot of folks, so it's not an open to the public kind of a thing. The contractor will continue to clear the site. The contractor's begun earthwork for the new school. And the answer to the question we get asked about the high school land is no, we're not clearing all the trees on the entire site that would include the high school. That's not part of the funding that's been provided through the bond process for that elementary school. We also, want to note that the Everett Memorial Stadium baseball field dedication ceremony is June 15. It's at 6:30 p.m. and it's followed by an Aqua Sox baseball game, and you are all invited to participate. Tonight we're going to submit the superintendent's recommendation to you on elementary boundary revisions. that will create that service area for elementary number 18 and redistribute a number of students to other schools, schools other than the school that they're currently attending. Additional public comment will be taken on the elementary boundary revisions at the June 19 board meeting. Public will have additional opportunity to submit written comments prior to the board decision, which we currently have indicated is in September 2018. We'll review that some more this evening. 3 gifts were in tonight's agenda, $7,250 from the Boeing Company. It was part of the gift match Boeing Political Action Committee program, and it was for Cascade High School's robotics program to purchase tools and supplies to be used in building competitive robots. I have it on good authority that they are aiming for Jackson High School's trophy, but I'm not entirely sure. $5,577 came from Jackson High School's PTSA to fulfill classroom and grant requests, school grant requests for Jackson students and staff. And there was a $5,000 gift from Everett Public Schools Foundation to support tomorrow's 2018 Innovation Expo. The foundation is a major supporter of that. And so, by the way, is Boeing and some other folks, and we'll be sharing that with you tomorrow evening. Want you to know as well that on tonight's agenda, you had a lot of bids to be awarded for safety and security upgrades projects at a number of schools. I'm going to give you a very quick rundown. Those projects will begin and we expect them to be done, started after school is completed and to be done before school starts. Hawthorne, Silver Firs, and Jackson Elementary Schools have already, by the way, received new intercom systems and access control systems. This summer, we'll be working on the installation of video intercom and access control systems in the North region, including 6 schools, Garfield, Lowell, Madison, View Ridge, Whittier Elementary Schools, and Sequoia High School. We're going to install video intercom and access controls at the Central Region schools, 5 schools, Emerson, Jefferson, Monroe, and 2 middle schools, Eisenhower and Evergreen. We're going to install video intercom and access control systems within the South Region also, Forest View and Silver Lake Elementaries, Gateway, Heatherwood Middle Schools, and Jackson High. Work at Cedarwood and Mill Creek Elementaries will include new main entry and exterior vestibules. Exterior vestibules, office remodel with a secure vestibule and a video intercom system, access control system, and security fencing. There will be work at Penny Creek and Silver Firs, which will include similar things. And Hawthorne Elementary School will receive a new interior wall with doors to be constructed so that it provides secure inner vestibule. Locks of the new doors will be controlled by the access control system, and that will allow the office staff to remotely unlock doors and to make sure that they have time to know who's requesting access to the school. We're going to try to play for you. We're doing this again. Yes, here we go. There may even be sound somewhere. And if there's not, I'm going to go to the next slide. This is a one-to-one tech update. And I'm not sure I can get this thing to make noise for you. No, it apparently isn't going to make noise for us. So we're going to go ahead to the next slide, and we'll find another way to play that slide for you. That was twice. You know, we keep learning technology. These are the school visits during the past month. Several of our elementary schools, to include activities, community meetings, Cascade, Everett, Jackson multiple times, for a number of events, including ASB officers, GSA clubs, NJROTC awards and the NJROTC ball, OGG meeting at Everett High School, district athletic awards at Jackson and their GSA group as well. That's the superintendent's report this evening, and I think I actually probably ran over. Did we start the clock right on time? No, I'm done. That's right, we had 15 minutes, not 10. Ta-da, there you go.
Give you a little extra
Thank you very
tonight.
much. Yeah,
we knew there was a lot to talk about, so thank you very much for that. We are going to move on now to our strategic progress monitoring, and we have the pleasure of inviting Jeannie Willard and Becky Ballback up to the podium to give us an update.
Surprise.
Our annual update.
Yes, annual update and a companion piece to last week's presentation.
Yes.
Where we heard from Dr. Janae Myers-Twitchell. I hope I got her entire name. Is that right, Dana? Which was a reminder of some of the work that we've done, but also, of course, she had aspects of the workforce that is a great companion piece to that, right? Is one of our questions going forward. So I have the pleasure of presenting to you with Becky, who will join me later in the presentation. It is an annual presentation that shares our post-secondary enrollment patterns. So this year I'll be able to share 2005 through 2016, so we're 2 years delayed. We'll look at the plans for students graduating from the class of 2018. So this would have been a companion to my presentation 2 weeks ago, because all of our students have plans for when they graduate. Our FAFSA completion rates to date, I'll be able to share. And then the systems of support, Becky will join us to share our work around that. So as I outlined, we'll have our enrollment patterns, what our post-secondary planning looks like, our systems of support, and our summary and next steps. So in terms of background for our post-secondary enrollment rates, one of the pieces of information that we've collected over the last 5 years really comes from our Equal Opportunity Schools work, and they're our partner around growing our advanced placement or our AP program. And if you remember, which I get to share with you around our AP growth, as well as the diversity of the students in that program, we survey students each fall, and we have been doing that for the last 5 years. And that's for all kids grades 9 through 12, asking them about their aspirations after they graduate, and it also asks them questions about whether they know anything about advanced placement and other options. So one of the pieces we were able to gather from that, and we share it and work with our schools around the aspiration data, is that our students overwhelmingly want to go on to higher education institutions. And what this data says is no matter which group really you're looking at, that students want to go on to four-year institutions, and they do want to go on to even advanced degrees beyond that. Now we know, because we also have the data in the next few slides, that students do start in many other pathways. And what we never really have is a complete story of what their complete trajectory is, including what their careers will be later. So from there, we do know that there's a real desire, though, that kids want to go on. So in the next few slides, I'm going to share data and the same sources of data that you heard from Dr. Twitchell. It comes from our Educational Research and Data Center. So the state prepares that data, and it has a lot of different sources that we don't directly have access to, which is very helpful for just knowing what truly our students are doing. So over the last 11 years, we've been collecting data, and we've seen our data stay fairly stable in the 60s, but we saw a boost from 2015 to from 62% to 65% of our graduating students. So it's always a subset of our graduates, which keeps growing as well. And so what you see subsequently is that we also see a larger number of students who are going on with their post-secondary enrollment. Also, in this data, we see the very first year, I think this is exciting, we see the very first year of our Naviance data show up, because the class of 2016 was the first class that used it to actually request their transcripts for college applications, and then told us in their high school and beyond plan survey what their plan was and which school they were admitted to, or whether they were going to enlist in the military, or what the things that were barriers to going on to college were. So we're finally seeing where some of that work may have paid off. We have seen before that most of our students stay very close to home, stay within the state, and really, if you look even more closely at other kinds of data, they stay really in this area. And the next slide, you'll see for the class of 2016, this is the first class where we had Naviance, but we are also seeing a departure from what we saw more generally in all of the other pie charts that I've shared with you. And the departure is, it normally was very close to 50-50 in terms of 2-year and 4-year enrollment. But with the class of 2016, we actually saw a much larger group of students choose 4-year institutions upon enrollment. One of the mostly largely consistent pieces in this pie chart, though, is our Everett Community College. Enrollment rates continues to be in the high 20s, close to 30%. This has continued on over all the years that you saw in that 2005 onward data. And then the University of Washington was our largest four-year university and gained most of those percents. So many of our kids are going there, and it's not broken out in the way where you'd want to see the different campuses for the University of Washington. And we know many of our students go on to the Bothell campus, and they can go on to the Tacoma campus, but they often stay close. In terms of our post-secondary enrollment by race and ethnicity, you'll see that we see very similar data overall from previous years. We have work to do around our Hispanic students, where half of them are not enrolling. And you will see some other groups show up in the later data where we see some consistent trends where there needs to be work in that area. And we do work very diligently and focus on those students. But this is where we're going to have to continue our focus. In terms of gender, it's not quite 50%, but nearly 50% of our students who are female go on to four-year universities, and then not quite 50%, it's 42% of our boys are not enrolling. So you can see a stark contrast right there. In terms of our income levels, half of our low-income students do not enroll in a post-secondary institution. You will see this later when you see our data around our high school and beyond plan. Students report consistently that financial obligations and barriers are a real hurdle to actually enrolling. And so we continue to do that work around financial awareness and college affordability. Indicators that we've used, and I know that Catherine Matthews shares many of our indicators, but one of the pieces that comes out of ERDC is that if a student receives a 3.0 GPA, they're much more likely to go on and enroll. And then if they fall below that 3.0 threshold, you will see that again, we have many students around the 50% level again who are not enrolling. So that is another piece that plays into what we can identify and work with students around. The next four slides are high school by high school, showing largely the college graduation rate. And if you remember, the college graduation rate, it's not 4 years like our rate, but it's 6 years. They get more time. I don't understand, but we'll go with it. They've set that up for us. And so what you see here is the classes from, or the class of 2010, because that's how many years it takes in order to receive that data. We see fairly consistent data in terms of their graduation rates, so that you see Cascade at just under 40%, that you see Everett High School just under 40%. Jackson is around 50% in terms of their college graduation rate on time. And then Sequoia very consistently at around 15%, and you see that data as well. Our post-secondary planning, we do a lot of intensive post-secondary planning. Most of the time I'm able to share that with you because over the last 3 years we have had the Naviance, or last 5 years, I'm sorry about that. The last 5 years we have been, or I said that wrong again. The last 4 years, let's choose a number. We have had Naviance in place. It's been the last 3 years. This will be the third year where we've had it for seniors to use for their college application. And it was that fourth year, the year before, where we started rolling out to our 9th through 11th graders. This is also the year where the class of 2018, actually, we're the first group to have it as 9th graders, and we'll be graduating having had it all 4 years. So we have Naviance in grades 6 through 12, and we have also been monitoring for many years our FAFSA completion rates. We were part of the initial FAFSA completion pilot across the country. So in grades 6 through 12, we have a scope and sequence in place at all of our middle and high schools, where our counselors largely lead the work of making sure students log into Naviance and complete the tasks that we have in mind. There are goal setting, there are career interest inventories, there are resumes to be completed. There are all sorts of tools for exploring both careers and colleges and for mapping out that work. We have been working on those scopes and sequences with our counselors, so we keep changing those and making them more relevant for our students. Definitely listening to the feedback we receive directly from students. Our college and career readiness seminar class is being updated and put in the new Canvas system. So you're going to hear many of our classes as their learning management system will use Canvas, and this will be one of the first classes that rolls out in that manner. Also, one of the great additions to our Naviance program is that we've had to have students have a separate login in order to get into Naviance, a very special one, little formula there. But now it'll be the same login they use for logging into their district computers through Clever, and that's what Clever really does. And that can be in many different tools, but it will work for this as well. And then Naviance overall is being overhauled in many new features and looks very different than it had in the past. And that was based on a lot of feedback, even direct feedback from our counselors, our students, and us, when I point at Becky and I, and Sarah Pewitt, who is our High School and Beyond Plan facilitator. And we are part of the Naviance Advisory Board nationally and share back that feedback. One of the key pieces I wanted to share with you tonight is that our seniors complete their high school and beyond plan survey and tell us a lot about what led up to their choices at the end of their high school career. There are 15 survey questions that we've administered, and we have them update in May and June. One of the great pieces is we find out what they're interested in terms of their careers. They've told us many times, but this is another place to capture it. Many of the themes that we heard from last week and in many different presentations where we talk about careers, students are interested in local industries. You see aerospace there, that's alphabetical, but you see that show up a lot. You see a lot of the medicines, healthcare fields show up many times, and many of the same themes show up over the last 3 years. As far as our college applications go, if you look to the far right, the blue bar is our work in progress, and so that is being worked on right now. We send out lists of students who have not completed a college application today, and we are currently still working through those. And if you were to look back at the prior 2 years where we were able to do this as well, our rates were about this level at this time too. So this is the one-on-one work that we always talk about when we talk about on-time graduation and post-secondary planning. We are reaching out to students, we follow up with them and ensure that they have a plan in place. Our profiles around our college applications are that we largely still see Everett Community College right now as the school of choice, and then the University of Washington, which you also saw in the pie chart. Our students, as an average, are graduating with a 2.8 GPA, but of course we have kids at every end of the spectrum. Another piece that is included here is really about the college entrance GPA as reference so that you know what schools are really requiring. And then another key piece is really knowing what is their college graduation rate, because when a student selects a school, they are also part of another system that graduates students at a certain rate. And Everett Community College, with their 31% college graduation rate, is actually a very high community college graduation rate. But that is a consideration when kids go on, what it is that a school will be able to help them with. So I'm sharing two images, one of Everett Community College and then of the University of Washington. These are images of the information that's available on Naviance for students to actually find out whether or not if a college is truly affordable to them. And it has ways, and you can see on this screen, but it's not, and it's, I'm not clicking on it in Naviance, is that a student, if they were to choose their income being under $30,000, there are places in the system for them to select the kinds of aid, how many kids percentage-wise receive aid in order to go on to school, and the average price that a family with that income could plan to spend for their student or child to go on to school. And then there's a lot of tools for comparison. So this is Everett Community College, and then you'll see by flipping to the University of Washington that many more students receive aid, and that the average price for a year of education there is still much lower than you would pay if you did not receive any aid, but it is higher than Everett Community College. So there are tools in there for comparison. Students also have been consistently telling us about whether they've enlisted in the military. And over the last 3 years, we've consistently had about 50-some students enlist in the military. And this was true for this year as well. Students consistently tell us they do not continue their education, largely because it's a financial decision. And even when you look into the comments, because there's a place to write in comments, you hear comments about the financial aspect of going on. Students tell us repeatedly, and these numbers are very similar to the last 2 years, that they do receive post-secondary planning. We see here again that they want more help around job applications. It was one of the lower pieces here. Then in terms of course preparation, we see consistently high marks for many of the different content areas and receiving support that they felt would be relevant for their career choices. And then when they reflect on their high school experiences, and this was true last year and the year before, students overwhelmingly believe the staff members at their high school encourage them to go on and continue their education. And with that, our FAFSA completion rates continue to bop up and down. We have a work in progress in our last blue, that's the column on the right, the bar there, where this is the rate as of about 3 weeks ago. And what we see is kids continue and their families continue to complete the FAFSA through the summer. So we would imagine that those will go up because we often see 3 to 5% gain in that summertime. I want to hand over this presentation to Becky Balbeck to talk about systems of support.
Thank you, Jeannie. And tonight, we're going to look at the multi-tiered system of support as a lens for focusing on post-secondary systems of support. Typically, the MTSS model focuses on academics and behavior and social-emotional learning, but it's also helpful to add in that third area of college and career to reflect the alignment of college, career, and life ready. This graphic takes the three elements of the MTSS model. This one is specific to school counseling, but it shows us that it provides a framework to show that there are three tiers for not only for the academic domain and the social emotional or behavior domain, but also for the post-secondary domain. And that's a great organizer for us to talk about how we support students with their college and career or post-secondary efforts. So utilizing the language of the multi-tiered systems of support, let's look at the examples of Tier 1 supports in the college career readiness domain. These are supports that all students get, and it would include the facilitation of the completion of the high school and beyond plan that Jeannie unpacked for us and talked about, that is utilized in Naviance. Also, the high school and beyond events are another great example of those Tier 1 supports that are for all students and their families. Some lands of opportunity within the Tier 1 supports would include some more college kickoff events earlier in the year with applications and align it with the PSAT school day events and getting students excited and ready to complete the FAFSA and so forth. And also adding some career fairs at the elementary and middle schools are on our wish list as well. Examples of Tier 2 supports include the College Bound Scholarship and the recruitment and the support efforts for these students. Also, summer melt outreach to ensure that students who have enrolled in college and possibly receive scholarships actually get to college. So some lands of opportunity within the Tier 2 supports include adding more college essay writing supports and more scholarship workshops, because some of our students need more support in some of those areas. And then examples of Tier 3 supports in our system include the individual student family advising around post-secondary support and post-secondary advocacy. Lands of opportunity there would would include more of the one-on-one help that we can provide students. Our counselors recently met and talked about it's those individual conversations that they have with students where they can really engage and learn what it is the individual student needs and help design and help provide that specific support that they need. So in the area of next steps in this work, it includes that we're going to continue to offer and provide the high support for high school and beyond planning tasks in Naviance. We're just staying and being consistent with that, we know is providing our students with tools and planning that will be helpful and useful to them. In addition, supporting students in creating high school course plans that are aligned to their career and their college interests in their high school and beyond plan. Updating and refining the high school and beyond plan, the college career readiness seminar lessons as new tools and products become available. And then strengthening our post-secondary transition support to improve our college enrollment and graduation rates and persistent rates. Questions? Almost made it.
Thank you very much, both of you. Directors, do you have any questions for either of these two?
I just have one quick question, or actually more of a statement, sorry. A book I read, the Tier 1, the college signing events really have to do with athletes. What about college signing events? Some schools, especially schools of poverty, have shown increased college enrollment if you have everyone who's accepted to college announces where they've accepted. So Druvik makes a big show, Horseshoe does a big show. Everybody who's going to every college or university gets celebrated. If they've joined the military, they get celebrated, so that it is really, something to celebrate, not just the athletes. So just an opportunity. But otherwise, I think this is wonderful. So thank you.
Well, I'm really glad you pointed that out and mentioned that, because we actually had all 3 of our high schools participate in the national and state sponsored college signing day.
Oh,
yeah, it was
this
for
year.
all kids.
Yeah.
You're right.
We
Let's
have
do
pictures,
it.
and we agree.
I didn't know that. Thank
Yeah.
you. I presume that's meant athletes, so I apologize. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification.
That was a great segue. Thank you for letting us give a shout out about that.
Yeah.
We'll do it.
That's good.
So I just have a question. So after students graduate, do they still have access to the resources from Naviance, or does that end?
Yeah, Naviance, part of our subscription is that our alum can continue to use it as long as they need to, and they can request transcripts and they can do research. And I've received many requests from students who have graduated not to just use it for themselves, but sometimes their family members, perhaps their own parents, and so forth. So it absolutely is used afterward. And I could see that now more so than ever.
Director Andrews?
I have a question. I'm trying to find the slide again. Okay, sure. Thank you. Slide 14, I guess, where it shows the percent of students with GPA less than 3.0.
Yeah.
Those going to college. Do we know what percent of our students have a GPA less than 3.0?
It's about half. I mean,
About half.
yes, it's about half. Because if our average is 2.8,
yeah, okay.
generally it's about half. It's probably not quite that, but it is definitely a consideration. And as much as we work on grading practices, and that is an ongoing conversation and work that we continue with teachers, GPA still is one of the biggest predictors of whether students will go on, because colleges truly use GPA. And the other piece is that there still have been a lot of studies, and even recently we went to a conference, and there are many studies even more recently that show that GPA over 3.0 not only gets kids in, but kids persist. And your selection of schools greatly changes with that. So it is still a key piece to the big picture there. Yeah.
And on the college application profile slide 26, that's the class of 2018 showing the average GPA and all that.
Yes.
So at this point, or at some point in time, there are 10 students in all of the senior classes that are going to UW?
Oh, who had marked that they were attending. So this data is from April, our college signing day, and some of the letters and students going back to give us their final attendance of which school doesn't really happen until May and June. So even though I'm sharing this in June, it was prepped for 2 weeks ago, and that meant it was a month before that. And so there is a lag time. And so there are many more students recording their attendance at that point. So you're absolutely right in asking about that, but we have quite a few kids. In fact, we were just working on that earlier today and finishing up their final transcripts who are attending.
Okay.
By leaps and bounds.
I was, and if you explained that, I
Yes.
probably was focusing on the numbers. And
Yes.
Missed it. Okay. Thank you. This is a really interesting slide to see where the students do choose to go. And it's actually kind of surprising to me. Yeah.
Yes, and sometimes it greatly changes once you get past the top 10 or something like that, where, because you're talking about a handful of students, you get pockets of kids going places. This is also what I call very workable, real data. This is really came from Naviance, the kind of data we use, we pull out, we match to things, and then we have teachers, career specialists, counselors, of course, who use that data to work with kids. So.
It is interesting, the very first slide, that, you know, from 75 to close to 90% of students aspire to go on to higher education. And that reality, you know, something gets in the way. And it's great to see that we've got support systems in place to help those students reach, you know, their goals. And I'm sure that finances is a really large part of it.
It is. It is.
So, but thank you. Really a lot of interesting information.
You're welcome.
And encouraging. This is kind of what we work towards, and it's interesting to see the, you know, the end result and after the fact too.
Cool.
Okay. Thank you both very much for the presentation and the information. Okay, with that, we are moving on to section 11.01, recommendation for elementary school boundary revisions. I believe Mr. Gunn is going to start us off with some information.
He's going to start us off second.
Oh.
Yeah, I'll be first.
Okay.
So
Dr. Coyne's
we're going to actually,
going to start.
that's all right. We're going to do a little tag teaming here. This is a sort of an atypical item on the board's agenda, just because of the amount of time that, in a very compressed time that we've invested in it. So the sequencing is a little bit unusual. You're going to see the materials that we were working on right up into the start of the board meeting on the screen. We'll get them up on the website a little bit later this evening. I want to remind you all that this is part of a longer process that has phases to it and has stages of development, and we're partway through it. And this is sort of a waypoint in that process. We started out with the design of an elementary boundary revision process, and we communicated that. The committee was formed. It went out and did its work. It produced a report to me, and then we provided time for folks to read that report and provide us comments and feedback. That time concluded. I assembled a small team inside our leadership group, and they crafted a recommended superintendent's report, and we went through that extensively, and I arrived at a decision this morning, fairly early, on that information, and then needed to verify a number of things before I solidified what I want to recommend to you. You don't act on my decision today. What you do is receive my decision. You get to ask us questions, of course, and that's part of the expectation. We then leave that out there for a while. Folks can comment on it. We've set up a meeting, a portion of the meeting that's up and coming for you to receive direct public comment. And then if you choose to stay with the timing of the process that we shared with you and that we've been telling people, and you can change that. If you choose to stay with that, then you'll be able to accept comment from folks all the way across the summer, and then you'll make a decision, we would hope, at the start of school, in the meeting in September. Once you make that decision, then we move to a phase where we talk about some details. And we talk about, well, can we make this adjustment? Can we make the timing kinds of, versus the boundaries, okay? So it's purposefully, carefully staged so that we can comment along the way, okay? I want to say a couple things about process, about participants, et cetera, et cetera. I want to thank our Elementary Boundary Committee. I want to take a moment and express gratitude for the work that they did, the time that they invested. They did what we asked them to do. Remember, our philosophy typically has been that advisory committees, advisory councils, groups that we assemble, we ask to do a couple of things, and we do it in a way that they can deliver us a good recommendation. We try to gather open-minded folks who will absorb, crunch, debate, discuss, challenge, think, in order to come up with a recommendation. We provide them information, all the information that they ask for. We provide them support. We do our very best to provide them clear parameters. And I generally find that good people who come together and have what they need to do their work will deliver you a recommendation that you generally don't have to adjust. That happens over and over and over again with our Fiscal Advisory Council, et cetera, but that doesn't mean that it's not my job to make adjustments. And that's an important aspect of this work. The superintendent's role is a bit different from everybody else's, and sometimes my parameters are a little bit different than folks who are called together to ask to do things, right? So I think we want to remember that. This group did a very nice job, I think. They were open, they were transparent, they were thoughtful. They were as well informed as they could be with the information that we had and that they asked for. They were very considerate of what they were asked to do, the impact on people's lives, and they knew that they were going to produce a recommendation that not everyone would agree with. And we appreciate the fact that they did that. And during the process, they produced changes as a result of what they heard, which made some people unhappy. That's part of the nature of a group coming together, gathering information, doing the work, an iterative process where they're asked to take feedback and adjust. They did that. I want to thank Mike Gunn. I want to thank Chuck Booth. I want to thank Gerard Holzman. Sorry, I was having a swallow thing there. I think it's the cottonwood. These folks have done, and there are others who have too. They've done a tremendous job in shepherding the group's work, in answering questions, in responding to messages. I appreciate that. I want to thank the communications staff and principals and all the other folks who helped process this information and turned out all kinds of communications and reminders, whether they were in print or digital. They did a super job. I also want to note that this type of work, Mike, how many times have you been through boundary review? 10, you said?
Yeah, about 10.
About 10 boundaries. They are always difficult. You will never make everybody happy in this process. It's change. It's a disruption to people's lives. They're used to something, you're making something fluid and you're resetting it, and that's discomforting. That's part of what we know is going to happen. And we shouldn't be surprised that the uncertainty, that the disruption of routines produces emotional responses, produces concerns, and that people become worried in a variety of ways, and they express those worries to us. Hopefully you've seen the bulk of that in the material that we put into your agenda. You've been able to read comments. I think we had 220 individual comments. I would say that there were several duplications in there, so maybe there were 200, 210, something of that nature. I want you to know that this team read every single one of those in developing this evening's report and recommendation. I also want to remind us that hearing and understanding do not always equal agreeing. That's the nature of the work that we do. We can hear, we can understand, and we can disagree. That's going to happen in this process, and I want to make sure we've called that out. So what Mike's going to do is go through a number of slides. They're a little bit, it's a little bit of reminding of what we've been through, a little bit of reminding of the parameters and things of that nature in the communications. Leanna has information in case you have questions about all the communications work that we've done. I've asked Catherine Matthews, Dr. Matthews, who's our Director of Assessment and Research, to contribute to tonight's explanation of my recommendation, the information that leads up to it. Because that office did a tremendous amount of work in response to my inquiries related to what I read and what I heard across the course of the process. So Mike's going to do a bit, Catherine's going to do a bit. I'm going to jump in at a point or two, and Catherine, and then Mike's going to conclude, and you'll be able to ask questions. So I know I've taken a couple of minutes of the time, and that's sort of the way it works. And I warned the board president ahead of time, it may not be a 20-minute presentation, it may be a few minutes more. Mr. Gunn, you ready?
I am ready.
Okay,
thank you very much, Dr. Cohn. You've provided an excellent framework for this presentation, and I'll try not to spend too much time on those areas that you've already really basically covered for us. So once again, tonight we'll present the superintendent's recommendation for elementary boundary revisions brought on by the planned opening of elementary number 18 in the fall of 2019. We'll provide opportunity for you to ask questions and make comments tonight. And again, as Dr. Cohn mentioned, the primary avenue for public input on this presentation we're planning for 2 weeks from tonight, June 19th. And then we'll have it open for community online comments throughout the course of the summer. Come back in the fall and ask you to consider approving the boundaries. The timeline that we went through, this has been adjusted to reflect what we call the as-built schedule, at least up to the point of where that yellow star is. As usual, that star means we're here, that's today. So everything to the left of that has already occurred, everything to the right is coming up. So with that, the elementary boundary committee members, Jim Dugan with parametrics, he was planning to be here tonight, but I know he has a lot on his plate, and he didn't have a speaking part of this tonight, so he elected not to come. The boundary committee members also included 9 principals or assistant principals and 17 community members representing South End Elementary Schools. Most of those were parents. And then staff supporting the committee. Dr. Cohn already specifically thanked a couple of people. I wanted to call out or shout out a few other names for appreciation. One was Darcy Walker, and then Larry Fleckenstein, and then they were there at every one of those, I believe every one of those community meetings and committee meetings. Also, either John Piker or Nancy Brown from Transportation was at each one of those. And then support from technology, learning and information technology systems, certainly. So I have about 4 slides of guiding principles. The first one is what we call the required guiding principles. These were the absolutes. These were the things that the boundary committee was required to consider and to build into the presentation. I won't go through each one of these in detail, but briefly mention them. The care is that the potential impacts, both positive and negative, of any boundary change shall be carefully considered. Inclusion only after appropriate input and discussions with the affected parties will the decision be made. Solutions that the boundary changes should be made in the context of long-term solutions, not just short-term. This is knowing that over the course of time, every time we build a school, we have to redo the boundaries. So about every 5 or 6, 7 years, something like that. And then on occasion, we do adjust in between those times too. When enrollments grow or decline in certain areas differently than expected, we may well go ahead and suggest an adjustment. And then the preparation, we try to have the boundary process completed about a year ahead of time to give the families time to adjust their schedules. So now we have a couple of slides of additional guiding principles. One thing I was going to mention is with all of these guiding principles and competing interests, it is impossible to have a solution that satisfies and is, makes everyone happy. There's always trade-offs. So that's kind of what a boundary process is all about. So we have keeping neighborhoods together, recognizing that there are natural and man-made barriers, avoiding situations that either create or increase inequities. That's really important. And then this is kind of a new one for us in terms of spelling it out. This flexibility has to do with extended daycare facilities needs to be a consideration of the boundary process. Continuity, the feeder patterns, elementary, middle to high, certainly that's a goal that we try to achieve, is to maintain those. And then transportation, says efficiency, can also be seen as kind of a cost consideration, because when you add buses, you usually add costs. And then values, and that is that small class sizes and access to neighborhood schools is for our children with special needs wherever possible. Has to do with equitable opportunities and high quality levels of service. And then this is kind of an obvious one. Opportunity, school boundaries should provide every student with access to rigorous, comprehensive curriculum, rich and diverse, equitable distribution. So that's the set of guiding principles for the process. The process itself lasted about 6 months, had 6 meetings. After the first 4 meetings, I believe, there were 2 community forums where the committee presented its work to date. So it wasn't actually a proposal, it was saying more like, here's a work in progress, come in to the community, come in and tell us what you think about the work we're doing or what else you think we should know. 140 community members showed up, provided, in addition, 116 community comments submitted online. There was, the comment period was open for a couple weeks there. All of that was provided back to the committee members, and then the committee adjusted their proposed boundary map based on all of that input, and ultimately made a recommendation to the superintendent. As you're seeing this presentation, I encourage you to take a look at these slides. They were taken at the various committee meetings, and I remember how much work that was, so I wanted to point that out. One of the things that we're doing tonight is going a little bit more in depth into the committee recommendation, because we've actually not done this presentation to you before. We provided the committee report, and this is a picture of the front page of the report. So we provided this to you in writing, but never really presented it to you, so I'm taking a little bit of time to do that tonight. The superintendent's recommendation ultimately will build very strongly on the boundary committee recommendations, so that's another reason why we're doing it. So the committee recommendation to the superintendent, certainly one of the primary things that it recommended was creation of a boundary area that would supply students to new elementary number 18. It also looked at changes to the boundaries of 7 elementary schools, and it broke it up into 12 specific areas of change in those schools. And the schools that are listed there are the ones that were proposed for changes. There were 3 other schools that they anticipated possibly making changes at, and they ended up not recommending any change, including Emerson, Jefferson, and Monroe. With their recommendation, again, for 7 elementary schools in 12 areas, would relocate or move about 1,350 students to new schools. That would be their proposal. And then in their report, they provided actually the rationale and some of the other information about like the specific numbers of students in each of those 12 areas. So that was their report. This map that you see here is their boundary map that went with the report. And I won't go through each of these areas in turn. I assume that you've had some time to look at them. They really do draw, I think, a really nice set of boundaries for the South End elementary schools. Okay, so once the district received the boundary committee's recommendation, we posted that online on April 30th and through about the next 3 weeks through May 25th, we opened it up to community comments and received another 219 comments, and those are provided to you as an attachment to board docs. And as Dr. Cohn mentioned, a team of district staff, including myself, Larry, Darcy Walker, Chuck Booth, Gerard Holtzman, and Nancy Brown, I believe that was the committee, got together and developed from all of those, that input, we developed a set of adjustments to the superintendent and brought those basically to the cabinet for a conversation. So I'm going to kind of leave you on the edge of your seat with that note and come back in a few minutes. And in the interim, I'm going to ask Gerard Holtzman to come and present to you the key themes from the community comments that we received during that time. And then also Catherine Matthews will provide, as Dr. Cohn mentioned, more information about some of the data on some of the concerns and questions that have been raised in the last 3 or 4 weeks.
So, hi, welcome, and Cottonwoods are having a problem with me too, so be aware.
Thank you, Mr. Holtzman, I appreciate it.
What I did was, looking through the 219 comments, pulled out the key themes from the perspective of someone that was at every committee meeting, listening to the themes as they came out, and then seeing how other people in the community saw them. Before I go through the ones that you have in the slide, I want to make a point that the third comment we got online said, I am happy with the new school boundary as we will be going to elementary 18. Understand that the purpose of this boundary change was elementary 18, so that was encouraging to hear. Otherwise, let me talk through some of these themes. The first one, boundary changes increase feelings of anxiety and raise concerns. Any change is hard, and many of our families, even when they agreed with the need for the changes, discussed in their comment the difficulty of their children moving to new schools. And then again, making the additional moves that happen when they go to middle school in some cases. We found out that people are connected to their neighborhoods and their schools. Our families are happy with their current schools and the bonds that they've created with the staff and their fellow students there. Community members also helped us see how neighborhoods interacted with each other, especially around the area of the borders of our newly drawn boundaries. Families want to go to school that they live closest to, even when we might perceive that crossing streets were unsafe. Community playgrounds are also areas where students and families connect, and when we separate them, they are unhappy. Ethnic diversity is also highly valued by our families and was a common theme of families being moved from Cedarwood even to the new school. There were some comments that recognized the difficult task of the Boundary Committee, as Dr. Cohn shared. The difficult task they had in making a boundary change proposal. They also recognized the difficult choices that needed to be made to reduce the capacity of some of our larger schools. Families are concerned that there be safe walking routes, even in the cases where they may not use them every day, even in those cases where buses might be provided. These routes allow, in some cases, for students to participate in before and after school programming. Some of our families are concerned that the infrastructure is not in place to make safe walking routes such as crosswalks and traffic lights, especially in the newly developed areas along Sunset, south between 169 and 180th near the new school. In other cases, the comments talked about traffic flow, such as along 132nd, as a large concern. Community members asked us in their comments to leave room for future housing growth. Community members raised concerns about the congestion and the number of students that East Gateway Urban Village may generate. East Gateway Urban Villages area on 132nd, just off 35th. There are some concerns about the impact of increasing the students who qualify for free and reduced lunch as what we look at as an indicator of students of poverty. There are questions whether the infrastructure was in place in schools like Mill Creek to meet the needs as this percentage increased at that school. Some raised concerns that their home values were based on the school their children attend, and this increased the value they paid for their homes, and now they were being sent to different schools. Others expressed that they were moving to a certain area or did move to our district's areas because of the school they were told they would go to. And also we had real estate agents, according to our commenters, who spoke of school ratings, and that we don't, and the commenters asked that we only move students from a lower rated school to a high rated school. I think Dr. Matthews would talk to that point a little bit. And finally, we had a unique perspective on using census data. And you may have saw TV reports or newspaper reports that talked about racial discrimination in our moving of Area 4 in the proposal. There was a claim that the boundary committee only moved students from high minority neighborhoods to different schools. That's some perspective on what I pulled out of the 216 comments that you have a chance to read. And now I'm going to ask Dr. Matthews to come up and share some of her understanding.
So I specifically asked Catherine to address this notion of school performance ratings that people can commonly access on websites connected to the real estate trade. I specifically asked her to address that so that you would have some sense of the unreliability of that data. I have also asked Catherine to very specifically address this notion of the movement of students of color within our schools for this process and compare it to other processes like year-to-year changes in where students are in particular, and to address this notion that was advanced, in my view, very unfairly, that there were specifically desire to move particular groups of kids in or out of school, which was absolutely not the case. I want to make sure that that I underscore that the committee used free and reduced lunch data in order to attempt, in the process of what it was doing, to not exacerbate, but to try to diminish to some degree, not equalize, to diminish to some degree the variation in free and reduced lunch populations. They did not use ethnic data. Okay? I want to make sure that you're aware of that. Catherine, if you will, please.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to start first, as Dr. Cohn mentioned, talking about the inaccuracies of some data that is reported on private sites. And I think I've mentioned this over the course of the last few years as we have worked as a district to try to rectify this situation. What you're seeing here is data on Penny Creek that is on Zillow's website, and that is through Great Schools. And I want to illustrate some of the challenges with the data. First of all, you'll notice that this data is from 2016. 2017 data has been out for a year, and we are in the process of delivering 2018 data very, very shortly. More importantly, when you look at the data that is presented by Great Schools, you'll notice that in comparison to the OSPI website, the data is inaccurate. They report 71% of Penny Creek third graders meeting ELA in 2016, when in fact 75.2 did. And in grade 4, 69 is reported when it is 80. And 85% was reported for grade 5 when it was 88. And similar, you'll see similar with the math, 67 compared to 81 and so on. When you look at the, and science. They reported 81, and we had 93% of our students at Penny Creek meet science in that particular year. For demographic data, they take that data out of the NCES 2015 file. That's a national data source, and it's not a per student representation of the data. In addition, OSPI provides all of the demographic data, as you can see in green there, for our schools every single year, updating it every year. Here's Penny Creek's Zillow test scores, and you'll see that it is 2016 data again. One of the things that I noticed right off is that they present SBA data twice. Once for ELA and once for reading. SBA does not give a reading score, and it's not reported, not by OSPI or anyone else. And then you'll notice that the scores, math is reported twice, once at 67%, once at 70%, and in fact, we're at 81.9%. The same was true at fourth grade for Penny Creek. 2016 data is presented. Again, they confused the issue by presenting reading and two different scores for math, and neither of those really match the score that Penny Creek achieved, which is 84%, not 67, not 75%. Fifth grade, here's Zillow's data on fifth grade. Again, we see two incorrect scores, one for reading and ELA. It's interesting, they moved ELA down a level and moved reading up. Not sure why they did that. And then we see fifth grade met 84.1% of students were at standard. They report 60 and 63. Here's Penny Creek's attendance data as reported on Great Schools and on Zillow's site. They use the Civil Rights Data Collection of 2014, which is interesting since the survey years are 2013 and 2015. There's no 2014 year for that. In addition, OSPI provides the attendance data for our schools, a fact, by the way, that we have shared with Great Schools on several occasions. And you can see below, Penny Creek's attendance for all students was at 93.2%, not 76%. So Great Schools is reporting 24% absentee, chronically absent rate, which is grossly inaccurate. Here's Penny Creek's discipline. Again, the 2014 Civil Rights Data Collection. That's 5 years ago and not a survey year. OSPI doesn't give a per school discipline data, but they do provide per district, certainly, and that's available on their public site as well. Turning now to Mill Creek, we see similar problems. They report that they are providing 2016 data. In a moment, you'll see they actually provide 2015 data. Here is math. They're reporting somewhat higher for some grades than actuality and lower in others. Really no rhyme or reason to how they're calculating that. And then here we have their demographic data again. It's not based on the school's OSPI's publicly available data, and you can see that they overrepresent our free and reduced lunch for that school. And here is their by grade level test scores. So here we have 2015, not 2016, so they're now 2 years behind. Again, they provide English language arts and reading, and those numbers don't match. Neither does the math is 83 and 80. It is in fact 80, although it is interesting that that number is next to reading, which is incorrect. Here's grade 4, similar challenges here. You'll see English language arts at 81% for grade 4. It was 77. It is in fact correct on the reading slide, but that's not a reading grade. And then here we have grade 5. So they underrepresented Penny Creek, and of course they're using 2016, and they in some cases overrepresented Mill Creek's performance and used a 2015 number. And here we have—
I want to remind you, we have no control over what these private entities put out on these websites. We have no control, other than the few places where we can enter data, and it's not this data.
And I would add to that we have in fact provided them with links to all of the publicly available data sources at OSPI so that they can provide the correct data, since they do advertise that they are using state data, and they're not in fact doing that. Here's chronically absent, and interesting, Mill Creek actually has more chronically absent than according to Great Schools at 27%, but you can see this is the civil rights data collection that's 4 or 5 years old, and their regular attendance is 93.9%, so that's significantly over-reported by Zillow. And then here we have discipline again on that civil rights data collection. And then I just added this to demonstrate OSPI has the 16-17 data up, and with the new online testing, that data is up in the middle of July. I mean, it's very, very old data by now. There's no reason why it should not be accurate on their sites. So the second piece of data I was asked to look at was the trend in ethnicity over time for our schools, and I'm going to show you some table here and then some graphical displays of this data. So what you're seeing here from 2013 to 2017 is the official OSPI enrollment data based on the official OSPI enrollment, the percentage of students of color in each of the schools that were involved in the elementary boundary review. So for example, you see Cedarwood at 36.9%, students of color in 2013, going to 47.6 in 2016, and 51.2 in 2017. In 2018, that data has not been reported by OSPI, so it's based on our actual counts of students in our system right now. And then the 2019 data, there's actually 3 different representations based on the models that were provided to me. The first model, which, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, is all of 4 going to Penny Creek. The second model, which is split, and then the third model is all of 4 remaining at Mill Creek.
Yeah, so what's really important here to sort of zero in on is there are 3 2019 columns. They use the existing student enrollment, because we don't know what the kindergarten makeup is going to be next year, right? 5th graders will leave, kindergarten kids come in, it'll change the makeup of each school. That's what happens 2013, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So we use basically the current makeup and we say, okay, what happens to it if we change? The first column is the committee's recommendation. It was reported to be racially discriminatory. The second column is what the staff came to me with by way of a split the area, sort of a Solomon-like result. And then the third column is the choice that I'm making that I will explain to you in a few moments. So I've asked Catherine to examine the impact on the proportionality of students of color in each school, and she's going to tell you about the differences at Mill Creek and Penny Creek in particular.
All right. So the 2013 to 2018 change per year, that represents actual students in our system, as Dr. Cohn explained. So you can see the change for Cedarwood has been 3.88% a year. It's been growing over time. Forest View at 2.35. Mill Creek has been at 0.40. Penny Creek slightly higher at 0.93. And then Silver Firs at 0.01, the smallest change over that period of time. Silver Lake growing as well at 3.04, and I believe they had a boundary change not too long ago. And then Woodside at 0.68. When we look at version 1, then we're looking at what would be projected by that first model. And so you can see how those numbers change for each of the schools. And in the subsequent models, really the only change is to Mill Creek and Penny Creek. So that's why those are in blue. So in the first model, Mill Creek would go from 0.40 to 0.45, and Penny Creek would go from 0.93 a year to 1.14. So very small changes. And putting that in perspective, in a school of 600 every percent is 6 students. So you're talking about a change of roughly that number of students. In the second model, those are much closer together at 0.78 and 0.76. And then there's a slight reversal, but still very close at 0.72 and 0.80 in that third model. So again, 1%, 6 students. We're talking about less than 1% in models 2 and 3. And then just slightly over at Penny Creek in model 1. Just to give you a graphical idea of what this looks like. So this is, this bar graph represents the change over time. Students of color, the percent of students of color are in orange, and this is Cedarwood. And the model that is presented here is that third model. So you can see Cedarwood's been growing over time. It'll take a slight dip with the third model. Mill Creek has been relatively flat, really.
Cedarwood takes the same dip in all 3 models.
Yeah, that's true.
Because Cedarwood wasn't changed, right?
That's right. Thank you. Mill Creek, really increasing over 6 years, very little from 40.9 to 46.2. And in this third model, you see just a slight increase there. And here is Penny Creek, very similar to Mill Creek. Slightly down, 1% there. And then here's Forest View, has been growing over time. Takes a tiny bit of a dip there between those 2 years. Silver Firs, slight decline over time. Silver Lake has been growing. This change will make a slight dip in the percentage of students of color. And then Woodside, flat over time, will take also a slight dip. And I didn't have school 18 because there's one data point and it's the projected, so it'll be a very uninteresting chart, but I would be happy to make it for you. All right, so the third part of this is really SBA trends around socioeconomic status, which was something that the committee looked at, and certainly something, as you know, many times that I've been up here, that we look at very closely as an indicator. And when looking at the performance of these 2 schools over time, it's interesting, in addition to the graphs I'm going to show you, I compared the mean scores over time between each of these 2 schools, both of the content areas, both free and reduced lunch and not free and reduced lunch. So in 72 data points and 36 pairs, there were only 7 that had even a statistically significant difference in mean score. So very little difference. All right. So
if I might just for a second,
yeah.
you have seen me present data to the community about Everett's students' performance compared to some surrounding districts, to challenge some age-old perceptions that our schools aren't as good as some of our neighbor schools. And I've been able to demonstrate that our schools are every bit as good in terms of the performance when you look at how kids of poverty compare to kids of poverty and kids of means compare to kids of means, because that is a very significant issue in student performance. I've asked Catherine to do the same thing, to take the 2 schools that were called out in the comments. So this has been done in relationship to the comments we received. One of the sets of themes, one of the clear themes was, this school's far better than this other school. You should only be moving youngsters from the lower performing school to the higher performing school. That data was based on those private websites information, based on what folks were telling us. Catherine's shown you that that data is completely unreliable with respect to our school's performance. What I wanted her also to do was share with you how kids of means performance compares in the 2 schools and how kids of poverty performance compares in the 2 schools for the most recent 3 years of SBA data.
So what you're seeing here on the left side are low-income students in grade 3, and on the right side, non-low-income students in grade 3. The blue on each of these slides is Mill Creek, and the orange is Penny Creek. You can see in grade 3, Penny Creek has closed the gap over the course of the last 2 years. and our non-low-income students perform at roughly the same percent proficiency. And again, I would just say very little evidence of statistical significance in mean scores in these schools, regardless of how this is compared. So here's grade 3. You can see here Penny Creek actually improving their low-income students, Mill Creek taking a slight dip there, and Mill Creek closing the gap. Penny Creek and Mill Creek making the same sorts of gains over time for their non-low-income students and in grade 4. And important to remember that these are not enormous sample sizes, so fluctuation is possible. In grade 5, our non-low-income students, Mill Creek and Penny Creek, performing essentially the same. The gap widened slightly at grade 5 after having closed for a year. So, I mean, this is something that we work on with low-income students. And the other thing it's important to understand is we measure low income by free and reduced lunch because that's the only indicator that we have. But in reality, students who are low income, they come from very different kinds of backgrounds. There are low income students who are situationally in poverty. There are low income students who are generationally in poverty, and they perform very differently in school. And so it's hard to tease that out since we don't collect that kind of data. You know, things like your parents' level of profession and education make a difference for low income students substantially. Here's our grade 3 math, low-income students growing in both schools, closing the gap for non-low-income students between Mill Creek and Penny Creek. Gap increasing at 4th grade, but decreasing substantially at for non-low-income, or excuse me, for low-income students. Penny Creek making gains there substantially. Grade 5, gap closing. Both groups have been improving. Mill Creek and Penny Creek nearing each other, not the least because Penny Creek's improved performance for non-low-income students in that 5th grade year. Can I answer any questions?
Do you have any questions for Catherine before we continue? So I just, in summary, I want to make sure that you understand what I've asked Catherine to do is give you actual data about minority makeup and actual data about school performance. Because I want you to understand why, from my perspective, those issues I didn't consider in making my recommendation. They aren't factors in the committee's work. And in fact, the data really wasn't persuasive with respect to which school we would send students to. Right? Mike, if you would continue, please.
All right, thank you. So now I'm going to show you a series of actually 4 maps. And to do that, I'm going to start 2 slides back. And this is the Boundary Committee's recommendation to the superintendent. I will kind of explain where we're going to go with this by saying the district staff, this committee that suggested some adjustments to the superintendent, and then the superintendent's recommendation are very similar, and they're both based on this map here. So I'm going to actually focus your attention on 2 particular areas that will become the focus of the next 3 or 4 slides. The first area is, as you can imagine, Area 4. That will be modified in the next 2 slides, 2 or 3 slides, as you'll see. Also, then there's an area, it's the southern portion of Area 8, and the northern portion of Area 9, right along 156th Street, that big long road that goes from 35th all the way out to Gateway and Forest View. So those are the 2 areas to pay attention to as we move forward here. So now I'm going to go to this map. This is the adjustments to the Boundary Committee's map that this committee, the staff committee, proposed to the superintendent and brought it to cabinet. We had quite a vigorous conversation about this. So what this amounts to is that to adopt the proposal recommended by the Boundary Committee with the following exceptions, and that is to, instead of moving all of Area 4 to Penny Creek, we would move the southern half of 4 back to Mill Creek. So leave the southern half of Area 4 in Mill Creek, move the northern half to Penny Creek. The only other change would be, I'm going to explain this, and then I'm going to tell you that actually at this point, we don't believe any students live in this second area that I'm going to mention. It's very simply described as saying the boundary committee's map had drawn the boundary line right down the middle of 156th. We think it should be on the south side of 156th so that those properties that have driveways that go out onto 156th will all catch the bus heading east to Forest View, instead of having to catch a different bus than the one that's picking up the people on the north side of the street and go to Elementary 18. So it really just says, it's kind of a easy, well, it's a common sense adjustment there.
So Mike,
yes.
Would you, while you're doing this, point to the area of 8 where we received some comments, and point to the area of 10 where we received some comments?
Sure.
And then show the board where we believe the property will locate, the property we're negotiating on will locate Elementary 19?
Yes.
Because that's part of my thinking.
All right. Yes, I will. Okay, start with Area 8. There's a development, and Gerard may have to help me with it, but I believe it was right in here that there is some property that's not yet built out. And there is some housing development, there is some housing being started in that area. And so what we're hearing from the people who are buying those homes in that area is that they would like to stay at, what school?
The area is currently in Silver Firs.
Okay, and they want to stay there.
These are a number of families that don't have kids in school yet. And so where they want to go is the people next to them are going to Forest View.
Forest View.
And so their concern is, we hear our neighbors on the other side of Seattle Hill Road are going in the new boundary, the Forest View. We'd like to go there too. We notice our streets aren't on your map yet. And so these have all been developments the last year or so. But in the boundary, they've always been an area that was in Silver Firs, and we haven't changed it. It's an area that goes to Silver Firs. And so we didn't make a change based on that. Their concern was we might not have realized they were there. There's a number of new roads that aren't on the maps that we're using, so we were aware they are there. It's just they're new to the school district.
And Jordan, maybe you can stay up here because I suspect we're going to have other questions for you, if you don't mind.
That's fine.
Okay, so the second area that I'm going to point out is Area 10. This is currently, as you can tell if you look closely, this Area 10 currently attends Cedarwood Elementary School. And with the new boundary proposal, we would be moving them to the new elementary school number 18. And we received quite a few comments, especially I would say about half in the context of the public forums that the boundary committee went and held at the two middle schools. There was predominantly those comments at those forums were a lot about Area 10, especially the northern half of Area 10. And then there was, what was another area, Gary, that you would like us to?
Is that the Tambark Park
Yeah,
area?
so it's the area from 169 down. It's between 35th and Sunset. So the concern is some of the things I mentioned. Sunset's really not developed as a cross street right now. It's a nice through street. So if we move them to 18, which is what we're proposing, there's no crosswalks. They'd have to go all the way down to 180th. So, in the process, we will be looking at doing the things the school does in terms of working with the county to put in the crosswalks and streetlights and that. But their concern is it's almost safer to cross 35th and continue at Cedarwood than it is to go across Sunset, because 35th, as busy as you all know 35th is that day, does have lights and crosswalks. And so kids have learned to wait there and cross there. They're saying, in our perspective, it's better to stay at Cedarwood and not go to the new school, because it's really just the top half of number 10 on the map. Okay. The bottom half is saying we can go down to 180th, we can go through our neighborhoods. The people on the other side, on the east side of Sunset, can easily walk to the new school, and so it's the crossing of Sunset that's the challenge in there.
There's also a thread in there of we like Cedarwood, we want to be at Cedarwood, and not knowing what's going to happen at Elementary 18. We recognize that.
Yeah, well, and
These are
that's-
two cases
yeah.
where we heard, we listened, we investigated, we debated, and we don't agree.
And that
The committee struggled with that one. So they heard that from the forum, and about 20% of the responses on the first set of the responses were from that area.
Okay.
So they sat down, they waited, they thought, is there any way? But due to the proximity to, and the idea that Sunset is not really as unsafe once it becomes set for a school on the other side, and they might be kids that would be bused anyway, the committee decided not to make a change to that. So they weighed that one pretty heavily.
And I'm agreeing with the committee. Okay? So
Question, Gerard? Yeah.
Microphone, please.
Elementary school number 18 will connect with 174th, will it not? Or-
Yeah, 174th will be the back way in from the community.
So.
But they'll still have to cross Sunset.
yeah, so we have to work with the county on developing crosswalks, and I don't view that as a barrier. We'll be able to do that.
It's a dirt road now, so from their minds, they're seeing this dirt road with some old
Sunset is a
farms.
dirt road?
174th.
Oh, 174th.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
right.
in that sense, they can't see that as a thoroughfare. By the end, it will be before school opens.
So, thank you, Gerard.
Yeah.
Really appreciate that. Mike, Elementary 19's likely location, please?
Yeah.
Yes, that is on Strummy Road and 30, Sunset Road and Strummy Road. And I'm going to point to it, it's right about in this location where the arrow is right now. Just to the left and just a bit south of that number 9.
So we're in the process of acquiring property to build that next school, which takes a bond, the building of the school.
Yeah.
The property is in the previous bond. So that's where you should expect that next elementary to be built. So I kind of want you to think about that in that process. Now, I want to describe to you what I consider to be a couple of ethical challenges in this work from my perspective. So look at Area 4, and we're talking about the original recommendation to move Area 4 over to Penny Creek, and somebody produces data that's 8 years old. Notice that a kindergartner is about 5 years old, right? So data from a time when a lot of the kids who are in schools haven't been born yet, and uses that data to say, this committee's recommendation is essentially perpetuating institutional racism or is racially discriminatory, and that gets covered by the newspaper. The underlying data that we've just shown you says that absolutely is not the case. In fact, claims made about moving African American kids out, it was the result. Given individual student counts, we would expect one more. So from my perspective, I want you to understand that we did not rely on that information in order to make either the boundary recommendations or for me to come up with my recommendation to you. That creates some concerns with respect to this notion of splitting Area 4, sort of splitting the, a Solomon-like decision, right? So how do I justify, and it's not that it's not a reasonable alternative. You can do that. But if the folks in the lower half of 4 are concerned about 35th and 132nd, and we say, okay, we'll agree with that, how do we say to the folks in the upper half, it's okay, because we were going to bus you anyway, right? So, and the difference, of course, is that the folks in the lower half are saying, well, there is a walkway you didn't consider. Fair point. There's a path that kids use that the committee didn't consider in its work, as far as I know. So that's a difference between A and B. The concern about this validity of data was very important from my perspective, because the committee, in my view, did a fair and fine job. One individual portrayed it as racially discriminatory. If I don't do what the committee recommends, am I, in fact, taking the risk of having people agree or think that I agree with that use of 8-year-old census data? That's a real concern from my perspective, because I absolutely do not agree with the use of the data. I absolutely do not agree with what was proposed as happening. In fact, I have data that says the opposite was happening. So should I let the committee's work go forward and say, that data is absolutely wrong, we're going to go with the committee report? Or should I factor in other aspects of data and my view? So that was it. So there were those two really significant challenges. The other piece, by the way, was committee folks coming to us from saying, hey, that data doesn't represent us. We don't agree with that. So if I respond to that data, if I penalize those folks, right, by saying, no, that data is wrong and we're going to do it the way the committee said, when maybe there's some other factors. So there's this notion from my perspective of some ethical challenges in making some of these, at least that's the way I view it from my seat. Okay, so I wanted to make sure that you had some sense of that, that challenging conversation that went on within our group. Okay, so you had three essential options that I was considering. One, the committee's recommendation was move Area 4 to Penny Creek. The second one, which was split it, move 4A to Penny Creek, move 4B, leave 4B with Mill Creek. And then what I have ultimately chosen, which is leave all of 4 with Mill Creek. So we're going to explain to you why, and essentially why I've chosen that, and what impact that has on the schools. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, there are, before I leave this slide, there are two remaining, I think, real quick questions I probably should answer. One is that we expect that on the south side of 132nd, right across the street from Penny Creek Elementary, there is a housing, a mixed-use development in the city of Mill Creek, but it's not yet been finalized. The developer agreement hasn't happened yet. It is, but I talked to the city planners today, 356 housing units in that area, multifamily, mixed, some of them 2-bedroom, some 3, and some 0 to 1. So I just wanted to let you know that there's a potential for some expansion, some significant growth in that area to Penny Creek.
367
356 units.
So
356.
So this is important for a couple of reasons. One is that we know new developments going in there, and the committee knew that, and we have an estimate. The other is that we got burned on this Gateway project at, not Gateway Middle School.
Yeah, Gateway.
That's a different issue.
Gateway Apartments.
Yeah, right. That's on the north side of 132nd. That in the permitting building process morphed from what we understood it to be, what we were told it was, to a development that had 4 and 5 bedroom units, and all of a sudden produced a lot more kids, and we were 2 portables short at Silver Lake. So we're concerned that that will happen. This is figured prominently in my thinking, as is the development potential around Penny Creek long-term, not over the 5-year horizon the committee was using, but over the 10-year horizon that I tend to look at, right? And our belief that the most of Mill Creek is built out and won't grow very much compared. Mike is going to keep going.
Yes, and there was one other point. Area 10, many of them attend Cedarwood Elementary School in the Highly Capable program. One of the questions that we brought to Cabinet in a workshop here about 3 weeks ago was based on the boundary changes that we see happening, the Boundary Committee's recommendation, what implications does that have to our program locations in the South End, especially or particularly the Highly Capable program? The big question on people's minds are, will Elementary 18 house a highly capable program? And the decision has not been made in a final form yet, but I can tell you, then I talked to Peter Scott here just a couple of days ago, and he confirmed that it's very likely that there would be, when it opens, a highly capable program located at the new elementary school.
Can I ask a question? How long did it take Forest View to open their highly capable program? Was it right away, or was it a couple of years? How long? Well, I mean, and just because I know a lot of those kids in that area still went to Cedarwood or they went to Penny Creek.
It took us about a year to transition.
So it would be reasonable to do right at the beginning too.
Yeah.
So we have that early opening time.
That's
okay.
Right.
All right. Now, after much discussion, this recommendation is the superintendent's recommendation. It will leave all of Area 4 at Mill Creek. And then the only other change being proposed that is different than the boundary committee's recommendation is that it would make that adjustment to the two areas along 156th as I mentioned. So that being the case, I'm going to show you one final map, and this is the what the district's south end elementary boundaries would look like with the superintendent's recommendation in effect. So this is it. Shows once again Area 4. We've left the number there, but now that would be part of Mill Creek. And then, as you can see on 156, the boundary, northern boundary of the new elementary school becomes a straight line along 156, just on the south side of those properties. Okay, so with that, we've already talked through, I think, a lot of this. This is the rationale for why the Area 4 would stay in Mill Creek. This gives us specific numbers. 157 students would stay in Mill Creek, meaning that they would need portable classrooms to house their growth over time sooner than they would under the boundary committee's recommendation. As Dr. Cohn mentioned, it would preserve that much capacity or as compared to the boundary committee's proposal at Penny Creek Elementary, basically giving us more flexibility in the future to absorb the growth from the new housing at Penny Creek. There is more undeveloped land in that boundary area anyway, as compared to Mill Creek Elementary. So there is a good rationale there. And then it would also provide the students living in the Area 4 a safer walking route to their elementary school at Mill Creek, notwithstanding the fact that the school district believes their walkways to be not safe walkways, and we provide busing to overcome that barrier to school.
They currently have busing?
Yes. We currently provide busing to Area 4 because we consider the walking routes to not be safe to Mill Creek Elementary from that neighborhood. Notwithstanding that, we heard a lot of community comments that they still allow their students to walk to school from that neighborhood, even when there's busing offered as well. And the other comments we heard is that the walking route to Penny Creek from that neighborhood would certainly be unsafe because it would cross 35th and 132nd as well to get to school. So acknowledging that many parents still allow their children to require, I guess, that their children walk to school from that neighborhood, leaving this neighborhood in Mill Creek really just kind of acknowledges that reality. Okay, with that, we've already talked about areas 8 and 9. It just provides an adjustment that I think is fairly common sense between those two areas. So next steps, June 19th, 2 weeks from tonight, we will plan to have at the board meeting an extended or expanded session for public comment. In July and August, additional online public comment opportunity. We'll review all those after that point and bring back to you in September, perhaps even October, the boundary proposal for your approval. And based on your input tonight and then any further input we get over the next 2 months or so. And then assuming that we adopt in September or October, we would begin implementation of that. And that may also involve some minor, some adjustments needed like to special program locations and other things. Variances or transfers may be affected and that kind of thing. But that'll happen during the implementation phase. And then new elementary opens in fall of 19. And we'll do it again in 4 or 5 years when we go to build the elementary.
So, and that's important. I mean, this whole notion of, gee whiz, things could change in 3 years or 5 years. Absolutely, they can, and they will. The question is whether or not that will affect boundaries. And you're thinking about the next bond, and that needs to have a lot of elementary capacity, whether you'll choose again to spread it or put it in an elementary school or do some combination of those. Those are open questions. So we want to make sure that that's really clear. The other thing we want to make clear tonight is that you could choose some other option. You could tell us to go redo the boundaries again, some other way. You don't have to take my recommendation. This is the point at which we are in the process. You've heard the committees. You've heard my adjustments based on what we've learned in addition to what we knew then. and what they knew. All of our conversations and our projections and revisiting, conversations with the city of Mill Creek, planning department, met with the police chief this morning, talked about this, the safety of the areas, walk routes. We talked about getting together with the state to drop the speed limit out on 132nd. We've talked about additional crosswalks. We've talked about the possibility of federal grants that folks are working on. We've talked about approaching the legislature for pedestrian overpass. We talked about a variety of things. Best information today. This is why I'm recommending what I'm recommending. Okay? By the way, there were some really, really nice comments. If you sorted them, you could extract them from those community comments. There are some compliments that will be great marketing testimonials for the quality of schools in Everett and in the schools that we're talking about. Folks very clearly said they moved here for the quality of schools. From my perspective, that's a wonderful byproduct of all of this communication and conversation. There were a great number of very high compliments. So I want to thank, again, Mike, for the work. Appreciate you all spending additional time on this. We didn't really expect it to take this long. Frankly, we just didn't.
Information, though.
But I wanted you to have really, really solid information and know why I really didn't consider certain things very heavily, because even though they're in comments and they may be perceptions, they're not supported by data. And I really did zero in on growth and safety and the types of changes that I'm looking at in the future. Yes, it makes Mill Creek a bit larger and Penny Creek a bit smaller, but I believe those are temporary states of affairs, at least temporary state of affairs for Penny Creek. Mike, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good question.
Can we ask some
Actually,
questions?
what? Stop. Can you give us the final numbers after Dr. Cohn's recommendation of the 2 elementary schools?
Enrollment numbers?
Yes.
We will see. If not, here in a moment, I'm not sure if Gerard has it, but if he doesn't, then we can certainly provide it to you.
And is there a change to the free and reduced lunch at those 2 schools too with that change?
Pardon me?
Would there be a change in the free and reduced lunch?
It may drop to 19 or 20 from 22 at Mill Creek, if I won't do anything at Mill Creek, but Penny Creek would probably stay like say it's not enough to pull out the changes. At this point, and again, there's some flexibility in these numbers because we're looking at current kids and 5th graders moving out and stuff. But it's kind of the equivalent of we're probably moving Mill Creek back up to 7:30 or so. And before we move kids in, we could have Penny Creek down to low 600s, below 600s, but they could be 700 once the property comes in, so we don't have any kids counted because we don't know what's going in. The East Gateway Village should open in September 2019, so it's the same timeline as when we're going to make the boundary changes. So in reality, at the time we do the boundary changes, they could be about 40 kids apart. It could be less if the project doesn't go through or development stops for some reason.
Well, I think it would be helpful to understand the permanent building capacity of both those elementary schools and what the final superintendent recommendation brings the enrollment up to for what we know today, understanding that it could change. And then also because the free and reduced, how that is impacted overall for future discussion, because we'll certainly be having. And I do want to remind directors, we have an opportunity here to have conversation and ask questions, but we will have more opportunities for additional conversation. So we don't need all our answers, all our questions answered tonight.
Yes.
So communications team has updated web pages ready. They're going to open another comment portal so people will be able to submit comments on this, and we'll be delivering those to you in the future.
It would also be helpful if we could have some type of information from the county as to Eastgate, as well as their permitting process and when they plan on starting that project.
You're talking about the development across the street? It's the city of Mill Creek.
City of Mill Creek.
And we do have, we might
do
talk
have
to
that.
them again
Okay.
today, and.
We have that
can-
information?
Yeah, we can share that with you offline.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And I just had my only it's more of a statement, because it came at the Jackson meeting about the almost doubling of free and reduced lunch at Mill Creek. Is the staff prepared for that change in the socioeconomic status of the new kids coming in? I said, well, everybody's getting full-day kindergarten, so we know that makes a big improvement. But it was just, I think a valid question for the existing parents, not for what their child is, but really, is the staff prepared for that change in socioeconomic? Because it's almost an effective doubling. So.
Thank you.
Further questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you for a very thoughtful and very detailed presentation. Thank you.
Okay. I think with that, brings us to a break here for 15 minutes. We will reconvene at 8:42. 7:42. So, Mr. Fleckenstein, please take us through our policy 4216.
4215.
Is it 15? I didn't have my glasses on. Go ahead.
Right. So proposed revisions to policy 4215, Title I, Part A, parental involvement, is presented to the board this evening to provide consistency with the Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA, which places a strong emphasis on family and community engagement. To this end, OSPI's consolidated review of ESSA requirements hold them responsible to ensure that districts have updated this policy and that each school has subsequently updated their Title I site plans to reflect the new ESSA language. The proposed revisions to policy comply with the state and federal requirements. Of note in this revision, WASDA's model policy suggests a title revision from Title I, Part A, parental involvement, to Title I, parent and family engagement. The proposed revisions to policy 4215, Title I, Part A, parental involvement, have been reviewed by legal counsel, the Policy Review Council, and the Superintendent's Cabinet prior to tonight's meeting.
Directors, do you have any questions? Are we, you mentioned it in the beginning when you introduced this, that as part of ESSA, we're required to update our Title I to be in compliance. Have we already done that? Is that something that's, or is that something that's occurring?
Mm-hmm. So when the federal law passed, the act passed, our state was required to develop their ESSA plan, and our plans have to be written to be in compliance with that. OSPI will be auditing plans, our district and site level Title I plans, and we revise those annually within our district.
Yeah, I was just, I guess, curious on the timing as this comes through.
I must say, I like the word engagement so much better. When you look at what you eat for breakfast, the chicken is involved with the eggs, but the pig is really engaged in the bacon. So I think I like the word engagement. It's a more active word.
Yes, and I think it's important to note that
I had to change it a little bit.
The word was committed.
I think it's important to note for the board in our school improvement plans, for the past several years, we have had a specific section on family and community engagement, which aligns to these Title I plans requirements.
So the federal government finally caught up with us.
Yes, that's a good thing.
It's good to know. Okay.
Good to know.
I think with that, we will move this to second reading. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that brings us to section 14.0, upcoming agenda items, which we still have several, busy time of year. Dr. Cohn, please introduce
All right.
our agenda items.
Item 14.1 is a special meeting. It is June 6th, which is tomorrow. It is at Angel of the Winds Arena. It's our Innovation Expo. My recollection is that we've given you material to provide you the timing of various events, and we start, as I recall, at 5 o'clock, I hope. And you have passes to get into the parking area, right, like you do at commencement, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh.
They have your names, and I'll ship that email to you. It came in later, late today. Not late, just it was later in the day today. Mayor Cassie Franklin will be our MC. Druvik will be, I think, introducing and providing some awards, and we've got the reception room that we have done, and I believe it's sponsored again by the Economic Alliance. And I will tell you that the Economic Alliance has been promoting this particular event fairly frequently over the past several weeks, and we would want to make sure that we take an opportunity to thank them for that when we get to that event. June 11th. In the afternoon, we scheduled a groundbreaking for Elementary 18, and hopefully you'll all be able to be with us, and hopefully you will bring appropriate footwear for a construction site for digging and shoveling and things of that nature.
Do I have to bring my hard hat?
No, I don't, hard hats aren't necessary. Are hard hats necessary?
We'll bring you and supply you the hard.
Oh, okay.
It starts at 3 o'clock. How early should we get there?
Darcy, what time do you want us there?
Probably, probably there. It starts at 3, probably 10 minutes before.
2:40.
2:40?
2:40, 20 minutes ahead of time?
Put that on my calendar.
To get the cars parked places where they won't sink in the mud and things of that nature? Okay.
Are we expecting rain?
You just never know. It's the Northwest,
Northwest.
right? Okay.
Always bring a raincoat.
Item 14.3 is June 12th, superintendent evaluation. You'll be getting those materials. Remember, this was a trimester report structure rather than a quarterly report structure. Your third and final report will be coming to you, I hope, at the end of this week in anticipation of next week. Frankly, I hope in the next day or so. 14.4 is your special meeting on June 14. It's the Sequoia High School commencement, and you should find that on your calendars. And item 14.5 is June 16, which is Saturday. It is the high school commencements held at the 3 comprehensives at Angel of the Winds Arena. And again, you'll receive similar parking information as in the past. On item 14.6 is your regular meeting on June 19. You've got recruitment retention, affirmative action report. You've got integrated tech plan status. I'll tell you, we went over that report, that tech plan status in cabinet this week, and it's probably one of the most exciting updates that I've seen. I'm very much looking forward to Brian and his team presenting that to you. You have a host of general operating business items. You should count on a variety of minor changes to the schedule because we'll be adjusting a few things as life unfolds.
That's it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. We are moving on to section 15.0, executive or closed session. And tonight we do have an executive session to consult with counsel on potential litigation and to evaluate the performance of a public employee. We expect this session to last approximately 30 minutes and no action will be taken. We will recess here for a couple minutes and reconvene in the Silver Lake room. Is that correct, Dr. Cohn?
Well, that's a good question. Are we moving to the Silver Lake room or?
We need to get a phone call. We did not do the presentation, so.
Yeah, but is Silver Lake set up for the? We're going to go to the conference room. So we're going to go. Yeah, we're going to go up to the superintendent's conference room. So you may close your computers, shut them off, do whatever makes sense to close things down. So you're recessing us. It'll take us 5 minutes to get up there. We're expecting 30 minutes, no action after. Mike will be going up with us. All the rest of the staff is released.